And welcome back to the final episode of the Quaran-Stream for this term. I am your head of sport, Josh Sim, and I say final one for this term because next year I have no idea what's going to happen with the studio procedures in terms of getting in and out. So, but this will be the final one for at least the summer. We might do some bonus ones, but more about that later. We've got a pretty full panel. We've got Joe Spagnoli and his shark to the left of me, who's become a Roma ultra, and we'll definitely be talking Serie A in a bit. We've got I guess below me is Dan Ralph, who returns just as the Premier League has, and just as Man United have to winning form. We'll talk a bit about that as well, and then diagonal to me, I mean, one of the happiest people probably at the moment, Luke Edwards. And I guess, should we talk Aston Villa Wolves or should we talk Liverpool winning the title?
I want to talk about the title win now, but I kind of want to drag it out for Dan a little bit and just sort of torture him with that talk and just sort of keep it hanging over his head for a little while. Because I feel like if we talk about it now, we get it over with and then we can't return to it later in the show. So I think we discuss a bit of Aston Villa Wolves, to be honest, Josh.
Well, actually, before we do that, we should say we are doing the same thing as last week. We've got some live updates. I know Joe and Luke, you're watching a few games. We'll come to Luke. Luke, I mean, you're watching. You're doing the same thing as last week. You're kind of keeping an eye on the La Liga game that's been happening, and also a Bundesliga game. So we'll start with the La Liga game that's kicked off and is now into the latter stages of the game. Athletic Club versus Mallorca. 2-1 at the moment, and I mean that is sort of their expected result, isn't it? That we probably thought.
Yeah, I mean Mallorca are pretty much doomed at this point. They needed to get something out of this game. Prize the game 6 points away from relegation, trying to claw back a deficit against Eibar, who are in 17th and have picked up a couple of really good results recently. But no, it's really not looking good for them. They just haven't had the same goal scoring output of the other teams around them. They concede way too many goals, and it seems like they're just going to limp out of the division, which is kind of sad on their behalf. But they've definitely given a good fist fit this season. As for Athletic Bilbao, trying to get themselves towards the Europa League spots, try and get a bit of a resurgence going towards the end of the season. Although competition up there is quite fierce with the likes of Real Sociedad, Valencia, and Villarreal in those positions as well. So it's a difficult one for them, but Mallorca not in the best position. Looks like they are going to be going down at the end of the season.
Yeah, and it's a bit of a scrap now at the bottom of La Liga for sure. We'll talk about some teams got some big wins during this week to kind of separate themselves from the bottom of the pack, shall we say, and we'll talk a bit about La Liga in a bit. But you're also watching a Bundesliga game for us, and it's like a recurring theme, a running joke, if you like. But you're watching your second favorite team, Hertha Berlin, who are at Borussia Mönchengladbach, who need this win to ensure they play Champions League football next season. What have you made of it so far, and are there any updates you can give us from that game?
Well, Mbolo's currently throwing goal. I think it's Mbolo, and my stream is frozen. But I've seen a goal alert on my phone that has said that Borussia Mönchengladbach have gone 1-0 up against, admittedly quite an in-form Hertha Berlin side. Jonas Hoffmann getting the goal. I think it was actually from the work that's just been done by Breel Mbolo. Made the run in behind Dedrick Boyata, and I presume has laid it off to Hoffmann to smash it home. A really good start for Mönchengladbach. They were instantly under pressure in this game. I mean, I think this is actually one of the few situations where a lack of fan presence might actually help them out, because earlier on in the Bayer Leverkusen versus Mainz game, which kicked off at the same time, Leverkusen were able to go 1-0 up very early on and instantly put that bit of pressure onto Borussia Mönchengladbach. So they'll be very happy to go and get that goal. What that now means is that Hertha Berlin now have to score 2 goals without reply to take the points away from Mönchengladbach, and Leverkusen need to make sure that they keep their lead against Mainz in that match. So puts Borussia Mönchengladbach in a really good spot, and even puts them in the conversation for third place if Leipzig managed to drop points in their game today. So yeah, it's a very important goal for Mönchengladbach. They've had a really good season by their standards. I'm a really big fan of what Marco Rose has done there, and the perfect start for them. Leverkusen instantly going to be a little bit disheartened in their game.
Yeah, and speaking of Leverkusen, the other team in this battle, Joe, you've been keeping an eye on that game against Mainz, and I guess the big story is Kai Havertz is on the bench.
Yeah, Kai Havertz has been dropped for this game. Nadim Amiri, their new signing from Hoffenheim last summer, he starts in what is a number 10 position. And Florian Wirtz, the 17-year-old, is out on the right wing. So it looks like Havertz is probably going to be brought on in the second half at some point. Kevin Volland gave them the lead in the second minute, one of the most underrated strikers in Europe. They lead against a really in-form FSV Mainz. Goal just in past Florian Muller. Not much he could really do about it. I mean, Leverkusen need a win in this game and an awful lot more to go their way. Luke and I have already predicted that Gladbach will do enough to hold on to fourth place. They only need a draw at Borussia Park this afternoon. But Leverkusen ultimately good value for Europa League. They are so far ahead of Wolfsburg and Hoffenheim at the moment. Fifth place, about fair for what has been a really impressive season from them. As for Kai Havertz, I actually think he'll stay at Leverkusen this summer, barring a potential move to Bayern Munich. But he's had a fantastic season as well. Definitely one of the best young players in the Bundesliga. I'll keep you updated if anything particularly interesting happens this afternoon.
Yes, and you'll be fully involved in our chat discussions as well as we kind of go through the major topics in the different leagues. I'll just quickly give some updates for people who are for the other Bundesliga games. Borussia Dortmund have gone a goal down at home to Hoffenheim. Former Leicester striker Andrej Kramaric has scored for the visitors. In Frankfurt, versus taking the lead at home to Paderborn. Sebastian Rode has scored there. Bayern Munich, the champions of Germany, again they've taken the lead at Wolfsburg. Kingsley Coman has scored in that game. So a few goals early on, and definitely things to keep an eye out on as the afternoon progresses. And as Luke said, we had the early Premier League kickoff, the only one for today, which is I guess it's part of their staggered strategy of really spreading the games out. But Wolves took a 1-0 win away at Aston Villa. I think it's Dendoncker who scored for them, and that's big, and it's big, and it means a lot for Dan Ralph, because obviously Wolves and Manchester United are now, I think Wolves now have 3 points ahead of United with a game, having played a game extra. So United will need to win against, is it who? Oh, remind me who United are playing against. They've got Norwich today in the FA Cup, and then I cannot remember for
Brighton on the
that's it.
On the Tuesday.
Yeah, that's it. So, yeah, United and Brighton, as we'll discuss with Arsenal, Brighton are not an easy team to beat at the Amex. So, but I guess, we have to start with Thursday night, the Chelsea-Manchester City result deciding the title. Chelsea, Christian Pulisic obviously scored for Chelsea, then De Bruyne netted a worldie of a free kick, and then Fernandinho inexplicably handled the ball in a desperate attempt to save his team from going down, but they went down anyway as Willian netted the penalty, and that made Liverpool champions for the first time in 30 years, their first Premier League title. And Luke Edwards, I mean, you have to be the first person I go to here. Describe, were you watching the Chelsea City game? And then, first of all, yeah. So what was your emotion watching it?
It was really weird because I wasn't at any point panicking. It was a weird game to watch because I kind of knew that even if City ended up winning the game, that we'd probably still win it regardless of what happened. It would just take an extra week or two. But I was still nervous watching it. So I wasn't panicking, but I was nervous. So, I think when Pulisic scored that sick goal to send them 1-0 up, I just thought I really thought that was a moment that there was an actual chance of us winning the league that night. I thought before the game, I still expected Chelsea to maybe get a draw from it. I didn't necessarily think that this was a guaranteed City win, so I watched it with quite a lot of intrigue. But yeah, I think it was the moment Chelsea won 1 up that I really started to believe that we could have won the game that night. And what the game was, and what I just feel quite bad for Chelsea fans in this respect, is that it was kind of, for them and for Frank Lampard, it was a really good victory for them. I thought they played a really good game. Lampard did a job tactically on Pep and exploited some of the weaknesses, particularly Mendy at left back, who is probably one of the biggest flops defensively that has ever been bought in the Premier League, alongside Kim Mangala, for example. City didn't play well on the night. They didn't really show up. Kevin De Bruyne, again, was probably one of the few players that did. And I think that kind of summed up Man City's season quite well. I don't think City at any point have won more than 3 games on the bounce, which is woeful inconsistency for a team that's hoping to get into the title race. And I just wasn't particularly impressed by City on the night, with the exception of De Bruyne, which is kind of epitomises their season. And then Frank Lampard doing yet another job on Pep Guardiola and really establishing himself as a potential future title challenging manager. I think what Chelsea did on Wednesday night was on Thursday night rather was a real indictment of the good work that Frank Lampard is doing there. But I mean, there's only one thing really to talk about. We're not BT Sport. We can also talk about Liverpool and just talk about how amazing of a moment it was.
Yeah, and there's been a lot of videos that have come out from the celebrations, whether it's Jurgen Klopp really putting some freshers to shame with some his dance moves there. I've seen worse at the Copper Rooms for sure, or whether it was Virgil van Dijk having his interview crashed, as you said on BT Sport. So you can tell what it meant to them, and obviously Klopp and Henderson in their interviews, in their emotional interviews, you can tell it as well. Joe Spagnoli, I mean, we knew this was coming. It basically took 10 days of the restart of the league to confirm Liverpool were champions. And yeah, I mean, what will you remember most from their title-winning season, do you think?
You see, I didn't actually watch the game because I honestly had forgotten that this was the game that could potentially give Liverpool the title. After it happened, I wasn't really surprised because, like you say, it feels like we've been waiting for this title for longer than the 3 months we've been off. Honestly, for me, it felt like the league was basically decided back in November, and we've just been waiting for Liverpool to be crowned ever since. It didn't really hit me in terms of the significance of it until BT Sport released a video the next day, something of a highlight reel with a combination of Liverpool ever since Dalglish, all the way intertwined with all the clips from Jurgen Klopp's managerial career, his breakthrough at Mainz, his title success at Dortmund, eventual failure there, and then coming into Liverpool and this amazing 5-year project that he's embarked on. So ultimately, a lot of my reaction to it was in retrospect the following day, seeing what it means to you, seeing what it means to Luke, seeing what it means to God knows how many Liverpool fans who've been waiting, a lot of them from the majority of their lives, and even more for more than their lives, for a Premier League title. In terms of what I'm going to remember from Liverpool, it's pretty simple. In every area of the pitch this year, they have been the best in the Premier League by an absolute country mile. Goalkeeping, defence, midfield and attack. The complete package, miles ahead of everyone else. Maybe the best Liverpool team of all time, certainly one of the best of the Premier League era. There's nothing more to say. Worthy champions.
Before I get asked for Dan Rouse for his thoughts, I do have an interesting stat here from Richard Jolly. By winning the title this season, Jurgen Klopp is the 3rd manager to win the title against a Guardiola-managed side throughout Guardiola's managerial career. So if anyone can give me the 2 managers who have also beaten Guardiola to the title. Only 2 of them,
Conte.
besides Klopp.
Conte.
Yes, that is one.
Mourinho,
yeah.
Yep, those are the 2. There you go. So it's definitely an experience Guardiola hasn't experienced all the time. Dan Ralph, you have, I'm sure you have thoughts. So I'm not really going to give you a question. I'm just the floor's yours.
Okay, so for a start, people are talking about this Liverpool team. You know, they're saying, "Oh, they're going to start. You know, they're going to create a dynasty. They're going to win. You know, they're the greatest Premier League team of all time." That's what I've heard said many, many times, and it's just not true. I don't think they're going to win it next year. You know, there are only a few teams who have won it twice. That's City, Chelsea, and United. I think to be a great Premier League team, you have to win it 3 times in a row. Of course, the only teams who have done that twice, in fact, are Man United. They didn't win the treble.
Shock.
They're only going to win one. They're only going to win one trophy this season. take away the non-important ones of like the Club World Cup and stuff like that, they're out of the Champions League. They got knocked out of the FA Cup by Chelsea. If you look at their form recently, it's been terrible. I mean, they drew against Everton, who are having the greatest of seasons. And you look at the damage done to the City yesterday by the Liverpool fans. They're celebrating the most irrelevant title in Premier League history. And they just go and decide to destroy their city's most iconic building, which, says a lot about them, really. So I'm not going to congratulate Liverpool, not because I'm salty or anything. Well done, they won the league. They were, I don't even think they were the best team. I think City are a better team than them. I think Liverpool have scraped through matches, whilst Manchester City have, sort of blown teams away. And I think next season, I don't think they'll win it again. I think, Jurgen Klopp really needs to get a grip, to be honest. There was a video of him crying, which, come on, man. I mean, I'm all for showing your emotions, but come on, you've won a league. Well done. We've done that 13 times since 1992. I don't think you ever saw Sir Alex cry. So I think it's just that small club mentality, which they really need to sort of, if they're going to cry every time they win a league, well, Sir Alex Ferguson would have been dehydrated from the amount of leagues that he won. So, that's all I have to say on that.
I can only say that it's great to have you back on the show, Dan, first and foremost. Because I've missed having our resident Manchester United fan back on these streams. There's a lot to unpack here, Luke. I think I'll just. Do you want to respond? I feel like you should respond.
There's a lot to respond to. There's a lot to respond to.
I'm looking forward to this.
I'm actually overwhelmed by the amount of statements I disagree with there, Dan. Where should I start? Joe, give me a statement to start with.
Myself. Let's say the behaviour of the Liverpool fans.
Oh yeah, so this is fair enough actually. This is probably the one part that I have some semblance of proper agreement with you there, Dan. What happened in Liverpool City Centre yesterday is completely inexcusable. Aiming fireworks at a building is completely idiotic. Setting the building on fire because you aim fireworks at it is just something that is inevitable. I can't really defend a lot of Liverpool fans on that. All I can say is that it was a minority. This isn't everyone, and I think it probably was just part of the toxic masculinity culture that is kind of emboldened within football broadly, rather than something that is exclusive to Liverpool. I think this is something you would have seen even if England had won the World Cup, for example. I don't think this is necessarily a Liverpool specific thing. With regards to Klopp being emotional about winning the league for the first time, I mean, I think is I can't really tell if you're just going for fishing for nibbles here, which I think you probably are a little bit. I think you are a little bit. So, I mean, Klopp came into Liverpool with the club. I can't remember what position, but we, the first season we had with him, we reached 2 finals, lost both of them. Lost the Europa League final against Sevilla, lost the League Cup final against Man City. The squad that he had was just atrocious. He had the likes of Martin Skrtel, just complete dead weight. Joe Allen was like one of our best midfielders at the time. The squad itself was just in complete disrepair. And over the years, he's had to really fight to rework that squad and get it back to a level that can compete for titles. He's had people doubt him. He's had people ridicule him, particularly with the likes of the instances, particularly against West Brom at home. We drew 2-2, and then he did a celebration in front of the fans of all the players, which people ridiculed him for at the time. And over the years, we've kind of gone for it's been a steady progression. So we went and we did things the right way. We started 2015-16, didn't have a good season, finished 8th, but we showed some promise. 2016-17, we finished in Champions League, which again just puts a lot of the doubts to rest. Klopp had done a massive job there in getting us back into that competition, which is so integral to Liverpool's identity. Season after that, not great improvement in the league. Finish on, I believe, 1 point less, but reached a Champions League final, which we lost to Real Madrid. Absolutely heartbreaking and a horrible moment for Liverpool fans, particularly for Lloris Karius as well, who will go down in folklore in the eyes of many of our rivals. And then the season after that is the moment where we had real breakthrough. So we've lost 3 finals under Jurgen Klopp. We've had moments where people have doubted him, people have doubted his team, people calling him a cheerleader. And we then go and we finally win the Champions League, 6th time in the club's history. Just an incredible moment for all involved. And you've also got to remember the journey involved to get there. Nearly went out in the group stage if it wasn't for an amazing save from our replacement goalkeeper, Alisson Becker. In the round of 16, going and beating his old-time rivals Bayern Munich 3-1 at the Allianz Arena, amazing achievement. And then just going on and smashing the competition, losing 3-0 at the Nou Camp to Barcelona, albeit undeservedly. We played really well in that game, and then managing to claw it back in one of the best comebacks of all time. Then going and winning the final against Tottenham Hotspur, undoing the damage that had been done the season before. And, if that's not even counting the league campaign. Liverpool finished second in that league. 96 points is the most ever for a side to finish in second place, the fewest losses for a side to finish in second place, and I believe the third highest points tally of any side in Premier League history in an individual season, only beaten twice by Man City in 2017-18 and that season as well. So this is a story of Liverpool coming so close to winning competitions so many times, and you could have expected after last year losing out on the league after 29 years of anxiety, and then also losing the league by the finest of margins, having done pretty much as the club could have done. And then the season after that, the mentality of his players and the people he's worked with and his own mental fortitude to get the squad going again, to go and absolutely obliterate any competition the league has to throw at him, and finish winning the title with 7 games to go, which is the earliest in terms of, not in terms of date, but in terms of games played that any side has ever managed in Premier League history. How can Jurgen Klopp not be emotional, given all of that journey that I've just described? How can you expect him not to be emotional when he finally achieves his career goal and lifts the anxieties that have plagued that club for 30 years? I'm absolutely flabbergasted by that statement that Jurgen Klopp cannot be emotional at the fact he's won the league.
I mean, to be fair, I like Jurgen Klopp. It's annoying because I do like him. He's a likable bloke, just his mannerisms, the fact that he's a bit over the top, and his fist pumping and stuff like that. And yeah, there was a comment which was looking for a bite, and I got one. I definitely got one. So, but yeah, I don't really have a problem with it. I thought it was a bit funny. I don't think you would have seen other managers do it. I can't imagine seeing Jose. Actually, no, I've seen Jose Mourinho cry a few times. I can't see Ferguson doing it. I don't really think there's much wrong with it. And coming to the first point, which seems like an age ago now, about the fans and the destruction caused in Liverpool. I don't think it was the city centre, but it was near enough. I would have celebrated if I hadn't won a league for 30 years. I would have gone out with the fans. I wouldn't have, caused that destruction.
Totally agree.
Every fan base has got that one, small section of supporters which goes over the top. I'm sure United have them, and so I'm not really going to hold it against them. Just thought I'd denounce that. But yeah, I can't really. It's always going to be a minority, especially when it's these massive clubs. They don't represent, the whole fan base. They're only a small minority, and I think the fact that it came in a period of lockdown as well. Emotions are running high. Tensions. Everyone wants to go outside and have fun in inverted commas, and just went over the top. So I haven't really got a problem with any of that. And yeah, I mean, they won the league. They were efficient. I still think they'll probably hit the highest points total ever with 100. I think they'll hit 104 points. I think they'll lose to City probably. But if he plays a strong enough squad against all the other teams, I think it'll be the highest points total ever. Having said that, I still don't think it'll make them the greatest Premier League team of all time, just because they've only won 1 trophy. So they haven't done.
I think that's completely fair.
If they go and win it again next season, and maybe get a treble in the next 4 seasons, and let's say win it 3 times in a row, then you can make an argument. But up until then, they're not. They're a good team. Any team which wins the Premier League is a good team. They're not yet a great team. So let's see what
I can genuinely say that was very enthralling for both Joe and I on the sidelines umpiring that. I mean, speaking of minority fans, I mean, when we get to, I mean, obviously Serie A have fan problems as well, so it's not a problem limited to
Really?
just the
I've
Premier
never
League.
heard of those. We've got no problems whatsoever. Fake news. None of our fans have troubles whatsoever.
But obviously we don't condone the celebrations. Not, I mean, I guess Thursday night there were obviously understandably people very excited, but obviously the Friday night ones, not great look, and we definitely don't condone that. Yeah, I mean, wow, that literally took a lot of my. I mean, we can talk about teams to challenge Liverpool, I guess, next season. I guess that's a logical step. It's interesting that Pulisic's first goal against City is the first goal City have conceded with Laporte on the pitch since Harry Wilson for Bournemouth in August. So that's an interesting stat that underlines his.
That's not an impressive stat when he's been on a hospital bed for most of that time.
Just saying, it's a stat. It's a stat. I found it and I thought, yeah, that's pretty interesting. But obviously, City. I mean, it goes without saying, but I don't know who wants to take this. But it goes without saying, strengthening the defense is the number one priority, surely.
Well, that's been their number one priority since basically the Saudi takeover, and they still can't hold it for more than 12 months. They spend more on defence than Bosnia. That's the stat that we've been hearing for the last few years. In terms of actually a point that Dan made about 10 minutes, it feels like 2 years ago now, but it was about 10 minutes ago. Dan made the point that they won't be as good next year. You can say that about basically every Premier League team of the last 10 years. I've just been going through during that dialogue all the teams that have won the Premier League since 2010. Not a single one of them was better the following year, irrespective of investment, irrespective of competition in the league. So, the pattern is there for Liverpool to fall next year, whether that's less goals, weaker defence, injuries, whatever. In terms of the teams that's going to challenge them, with the European ban looming over their heads, I can't guarantee that Man City are going to be in that conversation next year. I don't know what you guys think, but we were talking about this last week. The trajectory of that football club is going downhill very quickly.
So, okay, before everyone gets into a spiel of who they think they are, just give me a straight answer which team you think is going to be the biggest challenger to Liverpool next season. Joe, who are you going with if it's not City? Are you going with Chelsea?
I'm going to say Chelsea. I think Liverpool will hold the league title. They won't be as good next year. Chelsea to finish second.
Okay, Luke, who do you think?
If City's ban is longer than... If the City's ban doesn't get reduced or binned, then Chelsea. If it gets reduced or binned, then Man City.
Okay, yeah. Dan?
I think if De Bruyne stays for another season, I think City. If not, I can see Chelsea. I can see Chelsea and Man United actually challenging as well.
Yeah, that's a shout actually.
Yeah, Man United.
I mean, interesting. I mean, I'll just quickly give an update. Timo Werner, who's heading to Chelsea, has scored for Leipzig against Augsburg and put them 1-0 up. Anthony Uja scored for Union Berlin, putting them up against 1-0 up against Düsseldorf. Freiburg have taken the lead against Schalke. Falschmidt has scored, and Werder Bremen are 3-0 up, which is a big result at the moment. Osaka, Rashika, and Fully-Krug has scored. We'll talk a bit about the Bundesliga table and we know Bayern Munich won the title. There's a few more stories that are yet to be resolved, and we'll talk about that. And Kramaric just doubled the lead for Hoffenheim against Dortmund, which Dortmund seem like, it's. I guess they've got nothing else to play for now, so I guess it's one of those last day games. Chelsea. So interesting too. I mean, the override. I mean, you all seem pretty unanimous in that it's all dependent on the ban for City, but Chelsea certainly have a strong chance. And as Luke alluded to, there was a lot of positive signs for them on the pitch on Thursday, and I don't know who. I mean, obviously we think. Well, I think we know Pedro's heading to Roma. I don't know if Joe might want to correct me on that one.
I mean, I haven't seen any official communications from the club, but from everyone that matters, it's happening. Pedro's coming. I think the contract's like €3 million a year, 3.5, something like that. It's happening.
So Pedro will be off. We probably think Willian will be off. We don't where he goes. We don't know. Maybe Spurs. Maybe to reunite with Mourinho. I have no idea. But Willian certainly seems to be off. And I mean, incoming Werner, Ziyech. They're targeting Havertz. I don't. As Joe said, that
Chilwell as well.
Chilwell, yeah, for sure. Assuming Werner and Ziyech are done deals. Assuming they get Chilwell as well, does that Chelsea team rather have enough to overcome Manchester City? Provide. I mean, obviously it's hypotheticals. We assume City will be in for a centre back, but how do you think those teams stack up? Any of you to
I think Chelsea still won't be strong enough defensively to mount a series, like to actually overcome Liverpool. I think going forward, they're going to obviously score a lot of goals. Ziyech will bring that creativity that they have missed when since Hazard's been gone. I think also having another season of playing people like Abraham and Pulisic, who have kind of, dare I say, gotten better as the season's gone on and really started to find their own identities within the side. I think that Chelsea going forward will look like a really strong side and will compete with Liverpool, maybe even succeed Liverpool, Man City in terms of goals scored. The question is going the other way. I still have question marks about Kepa, even though he did have a very good game against Man City. Their centre back Rudiger's kind of fallen off recently. I don't think he's quite as dominant as he was a couple of years ago. And then they don't really have a solid partner for him. It's kind of been rotated between Tomori, Zuma, and Christensen at points this year. So they might need to bring in another centre back. Maybe look at hijacking City's deal for Koulibaly if that ends up being a thing. But I think Chelsea they can't really treat next season as being a matter of trying to win the title. I think next season has to be a step towards winning the title. I know Lampard's been largely treating this, and I know the people behind the scenes at Chelsea are largely treating this as much of a 3-year plan. With next year being a step towards challenging for trophies rather than actually winning them, because I think Chelsea are desperate to produce a more sustainable model than what they've had in recent years, which makes sense. And I think they will start to take another step forward, but I don't think they'll actually eclipse Liverpool next year. I think Liverpool will still be slightly too strong.
I mean, yeah, I should mention the other one is do we think N'Golo Kante will leave Chelsea this summer? No.
For whom?
Okay. I don't know. I mean, his name has been linked with the exit door for a while now. I think it's pretty safe to say. So I was just wondering if any of you guys thought that would be a major departure, but clearly not.
I think only if PSG wants to dump up a good amount of money for him. I don't think Chelsea would sell him for cheap.
Interesting. Okay. So interesting. So Chelsea. Yeah, it's hard to forget that this is Lampard's first season, isn't it? It's definitely something that it's easy to forget, rather not hard to forget, easy to forget. And yeah, as you said, Luke, centre back seems to be City's priority. Koulibaly's been linked. Ruben Diaz of Benfica has been linked. So there's definitely names to go from there. I don't know if anyone has any more thoughts before we kind of move to these teams in the 5th, 6th, 7th, 8th, 9th category. Anyone got any last thoughts on City, Chelsea, or Liverpool before we move on?
Havertz, haven't they? Chelsea.
Yeah, I mean,
that would be a lot of money.
He won't come cheap for sure, and I would assume that someone would have to go. From what I know, I've heard Chelsea are doing a 1-in, 1-out transfer policy. That's apparently what they're going for. So. It'll be interesting. Someone would have to make way for sure. But let's talk about the battle for. I mean, the team from 5th to 9th on this ticker. I think it's fair to say that before Liverpool winning the title, the big story or exclamation mark was Arsenal. Obviously, we came off air midway through the Brighton Arsenal game. We did not think we saw Nicolas Pepe had scored, and I think it's fair to say most people would have assumed Arsenal would have gone on to win. They didn't. Neo Mopai wrecked shop over them, pretty much. And they picked up a 2-0 win at Southampton, so they kind of steadied the ship, if you like. But they also announced they're giving David Luiz a 1-year extension, Cedric Suarez a 4-year contract. Pablo Mari getting the same deal, and I think it's Ceballos staying for the end of the season. That one doesn't really surprise me too much, to be honest. Joe and Luke, we spoke about Arsenal a bit last week, so I'll give Dan Ralph the chance to kind of, give his voice to the Arsenal issue conundrum at the moment. What do you make of Arsenal at the moment?
I mean, everyone's been saying to me, they think Arteta's a good coach. I've got no reason to believe that's not true because the group of players he's got is the worst group of players Arsenal have had in a long time. I also don't see any reason for that to be true. It's clear that Arsenal aren't working with a lot of money at all because of the new contract for David Luiz, Pablo Mari, and there was something else that you said. Which just showed that they've not got a lot of money. The players that they've signed on contract aren't top quality players. And I actually, before that Brighton Arsenal game, I had Brighton down to win. I just can't see how they move forward. Lots of players are now saying they want. There's been Guendouzi's been linked with moves away. Aubameyang's been linked with moves away. Leno's injured for the remainder of the season, so I can't actually see Arsenal improving on that 9th place position. If anything, that'll probably be the best they get. I could see them even dropping further down. But it sort of feels like how Man United were a few seasons ago, where there was no optimism. The structure's completely wrong at the club, and they don't seem to have the money that Man United have or had to sort of rectify that situation. So bleak times for the Gunners at the moment, I think.
I mean, it seems like a while ago, but you forget that they got knocked out of the Europa League as well by Olympiacos. So they know that they can't rely on Europe as well as a way of progressing further. Joe and Luke, I know we heard. I mean, you guys gave your thoughts last week, so I don't know. I don't feel like we have to go too deep dive as much as because we've got that show there for people to watch. But is there anything lately that's come to mind, given the events of what's happened since we were last on air, or same, nothing really has changed?
I think Arsenal are in big trouble. They're in real trouble with becoming, or if they're not there already, I think that they are, for me, 5+ years off winning a Premier League title. And that's if they act now. They don't have. I mean, this is something that's rotten at the club. I think it's a backroom staff issue as much of it is a personnel issue in their first team. Bringing, no aspiring top club would be offering mediocre players like Cedric Suarez 4-year contracts, especially considering he's not even played for them. Really, I think I don't know if he's even. I think he might have made 1 appearance for them. But he's a really average player. He wasn't particularly great in recent years for Southampton. That's why they were happy to let go of him. Pablo Mari. I mean, I can understand that he looked okay in the time that bit of the game he played against Man City. But even then, is there anything to suggest he's anything more than mediocre? And then keeping David Luiz around on what I presume will be quite large wages is a mistake of gigantic proportion. Arsenal are in real big trouble. They need to change how they work in their backroom structure. Maybe bring in a director of football who knows what they're doing and doesn't have links to Kia Joorabchian, who I think is the agent who seems to be screwing Arsenal over quite a lot. And then just making sure they bring in the right players and spend their money correctly. We've seen it for so many years where Arsenal they buy a player we see it with Xhaka, we saw it with Mustafi, where they come in and they have this reputation and you think, oh yeah, this is going to be the guy that's really going to elevate Arsenal to the next level, and then he just doesn't. And Arsenal fans are doing it yet again with this Saliba guy who I've never seen play. But there's nothing to suggest that he's going to come in and revolutionise their defence. We thought the same of Mustafi. We thought that Pepe would be the next big attacker in Premier League football, and they just haven't reached that stature yet. So they need to start making transfers that they hype up, but they actually need to then go and live up to the hype. Arsenal are in really big trouble. I don't see them getting anywhere near the Champions League for the next 2 or 3 years. They need to accept that they are, for now, a mid-table club and then work from there.
Yeah, it's a sobering. I mean, it's a sobering reality for them, but that's where seemingly they are going. Joe, I assume you echo the sentiments already expressed.
I'll echo the sentiments already expressed, but I'll also add on the fact that I would honestly argue the worst of Arsenal fans are the worst that you'll find in the UK. This consistent refusal to see the truth of the problem. Like players like Xhaka and Mustafi, I've said this for years, they're not bad, they're just scapegoats. If Mustafi's such a bad defender, then how come when he's on the pitch, the Arsenal defenders visibly rely on him so much and thus put him in positions where he can make these mistakes? David Luiz, I think, is a little bit worse than that. He has made some legitimate mistakes, but again, they should have been able to spot that long before they signed him. It's not like David Luiz has been faultless in the last few years. Arsenal are a team very quickly running out of excuses. A couple of years ago is that we have basically no net spend. Well, guess what? After last summer, they have the highest net spend in the Premier League. They should be investigated for financial fair play from the figures that I've seen. Big problems ahead for them. And like Luke says, it's not a problem with personnel. It's not a problem with the manager, although like Dan, I haven't really seen enough for Arteta to prove himself. It's an issue with just about everyone else. The club is rotten at the top, but it's also rotten at the very bottom. And I will echo a lot of professional pundits' opinions that AFTV is one of the worst examples of English football culture going. Absolutely indefensible. Hilarious, but for all the wrong reasons. That's all I have to say.
Yeah, I did forget that Martinelli's been ruled out for the season, hasn't he? He picked up an injury in training, so that's another thing to go add on to their list of problems that they've got. But right, we'll move on from Arsenal, and we'll talk about this interesting battle for I guess fifth if Man City are suspended, which we don't know for sure for Europe. But Wolves are currently, they picked up, as we said, they picked up a win against Villa, 1-0 win, and from Leander Dendonker's goal, and it puts them in the ascendancy. Obviously, United don't play a Premier League game till Tuesday. They're in action against Norwich tonight in the FA Cup. Dan, are you worried as a United fan that Wolves might pip you to that fifth spot?
No, honestly, like I've looked at our games that we've got, and they're not the toughest of games. The only team that we play in the top six are Leicester today, and I actually think we've got a false league position. I think they're probably not even as good as Wolves. To be honest. And yeah, I think United win all the remaining. Failing fifth, we've also got the Europa League to look forward to, which I think we're by far the best remaining team in. They buy a Leverkusen to be honest. I think this Man United team is a very good team, and I think there's just a few positions left, fill in. Perhaps right winger with Jadon Sancho, although the financial implications of the coronavirus will happen now. But there's just a few key positions where if we can make good signings in those positions, we're a very strong team for the future. And yeah, I think we get fifth. Wolves are our biggest competitor, but even then, I think they've got some tough games coming up against. I'm sure they've got Chelsea on the final day of the season, if not the second to last game of the season, which I think Chelsea, being a very strong side, will win. But no, I think fifth for us. It's almost not a certainty, but I'm confident we'll get it.
Yeah, I mean you started your count, and we haven't talked to you since for a while now. You started obviously with a draw against Spurs, and Spurs being West Ham as well in the week. I don't know if there's a whole lot to take away from that result, so that's why I didn't really put that in the agenda per se. But then you beat Sheffield United 3-0, a pretty good win against. I mean, Sheffield United have not come out of the blocks that well. I think we can all sort of agree on that one.
But yeah, they had the second best defensive record, I believe, after Liverpool Premier League. So scoring 3 goals against them is no easy feat. And also, it's the first time you got to see Paul Pogba and Bruno Fernandes link up from the start of the game. That was, I'm going to say, a pleasure to watch. It was still Sheffield United, but they played very well. I think with Mason Greenwood on the right, that was, I think he's better than Dan James, especially for teams who are going to sit deep. So that was quite good. I think, Matic, even though he seems to be getting on, played very well. So I think it's a strong team. And I think, if you look I know some people don't like looking at sort of the expected goals tally and stuff like that, but we're quite strong on that. So I think it's looking bright for Man United. Certainly a lot brighter than it was, let's say, 2 seasons ago under Jose Mourinho.
Yeah, I think I read somewhere that you guys are on a 13-game unbeaten run in the Premier League, which is a pretty decent run. 13 games being more or less a third of the season. So that's not too bad. That's not a pretty good feat there.
Before the break as well, 2-0.
Yeah,
It was a great game.
Yeah, absolutely. And And I know, and I do. I'll get Luke and Joe's views on the top 5 race in just a sec. I know and I hope you don't mind me saying this. You expressed to me that you wanted to say a few things about David De Gea, and so I will give you the platform to go for it.
I'll mute myself.
Yeah, I think let's first start by saying that Man United have an incredibly strong core of goalkeepers. You've probably got to say that we've got the best Spanish goalkeeper, the best Argentinian goalkeeper, and the best English goalkeeper. The best English goalkeeper being Dean Henderson. I don't think anyone can really argue with that. I think everyone here would say he's better than Jordan Pickford. Granted, he hasn't been given a proper chance to prove himself in the English shirt yet, but I think he will at the Euros next season. So it's a dilemma in terms of, yes, David De Gea is not having the best of seasons. Sergio Romero is a very reliable backup. So, there's a question of, for the remainder of the season, do you give Sergio Romero a run in the Premier League? And then what do we do with Dean Henderson coming back next season? Personally, I think David De Gea has got enough, sort of credit in the bank to see out next season as well. I think he will improve. I don't think he's been as bad this season as he was last season. I think he's just going through a dip in form that, every player goes through at some point in their career. The problem with being a goalkeeper is that it's highlighted to a greater extent. He was our player of the season, I believe it was 4 times in a row, Premier League team of the season 5 times. So, I don't need to say much about that. And Dean Henderson, I was reading today an article in The Athletic saying that it would be more challenging for Dean Henderson to go from Sheffield United to Manchester United. At Sheffield United, he's having to make a lot of saves, whereas at Man United, it's more, can he maintain his concentration for 90 minutes where he might only have to make 1 or 2 saves? So I personally would loan out Dean Henderson, keep De Gea, and then keep Sergio Romero as a backup, who's a brilliant backup. I don't think you can argue with the fact that he's probably the best backup in world football. De Gea has been the best post-Ferguson player by a long stretch, and that was the reason that Ferguson missed only 1 of 3 games in his tenure at Man United to go and scout David De Gea. So he's a brilliant signing, and he will remain on number 1. Hello?
We lost Josh.
We may just be about to lose Josh. We can sort this out.
We can do this.
He'll be back in a few seconds. Luke, I know that what Dan's just said. Josh will be back in a few minutes on cue. Sergio Romero, best Argentine goalkeeper in the world. David De Gea, best Spanish goalkeeper in the world. We've had some words about this. Do you want to tell Dan what we were perhaps discussing about Spanish goalkeepers earlier this year?
Well, we were talking about, we think Pau Lopez has probably surpassed David De Gea. David De Gea, we think, let's be honest, for probably between 2013 and 2018, the best Premier League goalkeeper, one of the best in world football, at points the best in world football. His shot-stopping ability, he still shows like glimpses of it. He still makes saves that are way beyond anything that any other goalkeeper, maybe bar Jan Oblak, is capable of. The problem we have with David De Gea is we think certainly from my perspective, in recent years, he hasn't, and we're talking about literally the past couple of years, he hasn't been performing at the same level that he used to be at. And maybe we criticise him quite unfairly. And I mean, I'm by no means saying that Dean Henderson should go in and replace him at Manchester United. I think David De Gea is still a perfectly very good goalkeeper. But the fact is that he's no longer the best in the Premier League and he's no longer the best in world football. And it's of no doubt in my mind that he is on the decline. And I think it would be fair for Manchester United to start to explore other options if they're going to have aspirations of winning titles year on year. So yeah, sure. For now, I think De Gea right now is still a top goalkeeper. I think he's a very good goalkeeper, and I think he can still be the goalkeeper to help get Manchester United back towards the top. But I don't think it would harm them to start exploring other options, because there is no doubt that he is not quite the same player that he was a couple of years ago.
Okay. Joe, do you want to go?
I mean, we're still trying to work out what's going on with Josh. He's just working on it at the moment, so we'll be back in a couple of minutes. I mean, best Argentine goalkeeper, I was thinking Geronimo Rulli, but that's a discussion for another day. I think he's still starting for Sociedad. I think he's still starting for Sociedad, is he not?
No.
I mean, obviously, I've forgotten completely. But yeah, this is continuing. Josh is ordering us to continue the Wolves versus Manchester United debate for the rest of the season. What I was going to say in the midst of it is that if you look at Wolverhampton Wanderers' squad, even taking into account the backup players that will very rarely make appearances, it's a very, very thin squad. That's kind of what you get when you spend an awful lot on players when you're down in the Championship. And obviously, they're not long in the Premier League. The increased fixture congestion from now until the end of the season, European pressures coming on after that. I know United have to play the same amount of games and have European aspirations as well. But isn't United's superior squad depth going to help them out an awful lot over the next few weeks and months? Because their squad is enormous by comparison to Wolverhampton Wanderers.
Yeah, but there is a big dip in quality, I'd say. I was looking when I watched the United match. He made the 5-man substitution, and he was taking off. He took off Rashford, Greenwood, Pogba, Fernandes, and Martial, and brought on Igalo, Pereira, Dan James. I believe he brought on McTominay as well, and then
world class.
Exactly. So there's a big dip in quality there. They're terrible players. I think they're fine as squad players, but I do think, whilst we might have a big squad, the start 11 is excellent, but after it, there's a big dip in quality, certainly. But having said that, I think Wolves have a harder run in. That's what decides it for me. The fact that Wolves definitely have a harder run in. And yeah, apart from that, there isn't that much difference.
Josh Sim has returned from the depths of the depths of Swiss internet.
Internet problems, and it felt like I was on a delay. Audio was working fine, but your mouths weren't moving as where the audio was. It was very strange. It was like I was in a time lapse. But I think we've pretty much gone through all the major stories in the top 10. I know we've obviously got. Obviously the relegation battles are very much live as well, and because of Brighton's results, I'm assuming everyone now thinks they're pretty secure. Luke, I know you watched West Ham last week. What did you do? It's going to be close, isn't it, between them? If you look at the ticker, 16th to 19th, it's going to be a very close battle.
Yeah, I think Villa for me are down. I don't think. Well, Norwich is certainly down. Villa for me don't have anywhere near the quality to stay up. Grealish is good, but I don't think with the leakiness of their defence, I don't think he could do enough to keep them up. Which kind of leaves Bournemouth, who look dreadful. I don't see them. I watch them. I don't see how they ever win a game of football. But I watched West Ham against Spurs, and to be honest, for points, they actually looked quite good. I think getting the players like Yarmolenko back in the side was quite a big boost to that side. They've still got a lot of quality. I think the main criticism I'd have of West Ham is that they create a fair few chances, but they don't have the clinicality. I think that was really what they're missing from Marko Arnautovic. I think that's what he brought to the squad more than anything, is that killer instinct. And I just don't think, I don't think anyone in that squad really has that. Haller's come in and has been diabolical, maybe due to mismanagement on his behalf. Maybe it's due to mismanagement at the club. I would probably bank on it being the club, given their record with players like that. But nonetheless, I think West Ham do have a bit of quality in their side, and I actually expect them to pick up a few surprise results before the season ends. They're in all right. They're not in a great position, don't get me wrong, but I still think they have just enough in them, particularly relative to Bournemouth and Aston Villa, to just keep themselves afloat yet again. I don't think West Ham are a very good side. I just think this is a virtue of having three sides in the league who are substantially, maybe not substantially, but are definitely worse than them.
Yeah, and it obviously hurts Bournemouth that Ryan Fraser will be leaving the club in a few days. In fact, the 30th of June, only in 3 days. So he will become a free agent, and he will no longer be called upon. And he was obviously a very crucial part of their team last season. So it's been a remarkable. I don't want to say fall, but it's certainly been a bit of a sharper decline that I don't think any of us predicted. Dan, Joe, is it the case of the three at the bottom three and now the three that you probably think are going down as well? Like, is the table as it stands now probably going to be the end result?
You can go first, Joe.
Yeah, thank you. To be honest, there's not really an awful lot there's not a lot for me to say about the bottom three. Josh is having connection issues again. As it stands, the bottom three right now, I can see this being the final order, although I've been far from impressed by Brighton or honestly even Southampton. I really haven't been impressed with in recent months. In terms of the bottom three, Bournemouth have had a massive fall off this year. I think we all knew it was coming at some point, but certainly not as sharply as we've seen. Villa, John McGinn or not, it looks like they're going down. I agree with Luke there. As for Norwich, any team that defends like that in any top division is going to get relegated at the end of the season. Since the lockdown has eased, just not good enough. Honestly, though, I look at those bottom 8 teams and I just do not see a single good team in there. I just think they are, like, even relative to the teams we've seen in the lower half of the Premier League in the last few years, they're so poor. The fact that Newcastle are at the top of that and they play objectively the most negative football in the league, 18 pass on average before they apply pressure to the opposition, it's just not good enough. I mean, West Ham in 17th, I actually agree very much with what Luke said. Absolutely abysmal management. Talk about the recruitment of strikers as much as you like, but there are going to be 3 teams worse than them, which is the same reason why they survived a couple of years ago. It's pretty damn tragic, actually, but I think West Ham will just about survive on the virtue of the fact that, my God, the bottom of this league has been so bad this year. That's all I can say.
Yeah, I agree.
Yeah.
It looks, if you look at the ticker, it looks close. You know, you've got Aston Villa, Bournemouth, West Ham are on 27, aren't they?
Yeah.
And so it looks close. But in terms of quality, I think, you know, West Ham are just going to, I can't see any surprises, but I can see them sort of like squeezing past teams like Burnley and stuff like that. And I really don't think it will be that close come the end of the season. Norwich are definitely down. Norwich have tried to play good football with a team which just isn't good enough in the Premier League. You know, you can get away with that in the Championship. But, you know, even some of their great players who looked phenomenal in the Championship, like Buendia, you know, essentially Buendia has just not been good enough in the Premier League. You know, there's been a lot of hype about a lot of Norwich's players like Todd Cantwell, Max Aarons, Jamal Lewis, even Pukki, but they just haven't been able to do it consistently in the Premier League. Bournemouth, as we said about Ryan Fraser, he was possibly their best player. He's not going to play anymore. I don't think Bournemouth were ever longed for, you know, an extended stint in the Premier League. They just haven't got the infrastructure. You go to the Vitality Stadium, it's tiny. It looks like a garden shed. They just want to, you know, they might have a couple of years in the Premier League, and I don't think, you know, they'll go down. I don't think we'll see them again for a long time now. And then you've got Aston Villa, who have Jack Grealish and nobody else.
John McGinn.
John McGinn, yeah, who hasn't been as good as he was. You know, I think it was at the start of the season.
Yeah, that's fair.
He got injured for a while, to be fair to him, but yeah, you are right.
But you know, he was being linked with £50 million moves to Man United, which was just laughable, really. So I think the 3 who are in the bottom 3 will go down. I think also Newcastle are lucky to not be in that dogfight, because if they were, I think they could also have the potential to go down. They somehow managed to scrape 39 points. I'm still not entirely sure how, but yeah, West Ham aren't a great team, but just because the other teams are terrible, they will go down, in my opinion.
Yeah, and we'll see what happens. And speaking of the Championship, let me just put that up there. Obviously, this will be, again, because this might be one of the last broadcasts we do during the summer. Obviously, you know, this is kind of the a bit of a last saloon to kind of give our thoughts on who's going to go up. West Brom lost 1-0 last night to Brentford, which was a big result. That puts them in a bit of I wouldn't say trouble, but suddenly they're now vulnerable to. Certainly, I mean, I think Brentford are pushing themselves to making this maybe a 3-pronged race, if you like, for the top 2 spots. I'll just pose this. I mean, Luke and Joe, I think I asked you guys the same question, so I'll ask Dan first. The top 3, and obviously Brentford would have to go through the playoffs, but do you think the top 3 go up?
Yeah, I think the top 3 have a lot more quality than, you know, I think there's a big drop in quality from Brentford to Fulham. You know, I think Leeds play Fulham sometime. Is it this week? And I fully expect Leeds to win over Fulham. I think Leeds will finally, you know, get into the Premier League, which I'm happy to see. You know, they're a big club. I think they belong in the Premier League. And yeah, you know, I think Brentford will have to go through the playoff. I do think they will win. That's what
Okay. Yeah, no, Luke and Joe, I asked this question last week, so I'll ask you a different one. Assuming West Brom leads, and I'm guessing the two of you probably think Brentford are going up as well.
I said Forest.
Am I right in saying that?
I said Forest, but I'm not confident
Okay.
on any of them.
I think Cardiff might just sneak in there, as well. I know they're not in the playoff positions at the minute,
Interesting.
but I think that they might have a decent chance of getting themselves into the playoffs. And we know that teams traditionally, if they have a good run at the end of the season, get themselves into the playoffs, they tend to be in a good position to then go and win the playoffs. I think Cardiff could be the competitors on that front. But yeah, sure, I think Brentford at the minute are looking really strong.
No, okay, because I was just gonna. My next question was the three teams you think will go up. Of the three, how many do you think survive into the 21-22 season? How many stay up?
I think Leeds stay up. Bielsa will. I think Bielsa tactically will have the upper hand on a lot of Premier League managers, and I think that will serve them well. And they've also got some good players like Calvin Phillips, for example. I've heard from a few of my friends who watch the Championship religiously, banged on about this guy as being one of the next big English midfielders. So maybe he'll be the next, he could be like a big figure to help them stay up. And they've also got the fan base, and I think they'll, when they get the fans back in the stadium, Ellen Road's going to be a really intimidating place for teams to go and visit. So I think that'll give them an edge there. And also the hype around them being back in the Premier League for the first season in so long will motivate the players enough. The question for me about Leeds will be their second season in the Premier League. If they do go up, I think they'll survive the first season, no problems. But with the second season, making sure they keep the motivation up. As for the other teams, West Brom, I know that they've changed their squad almost completely since when they were last in the Premier League. So it's going to be a lot of young players. That could serve them well, and that they're going to be a bit more of an unknown quantity. At the same time, they might need to have a bit more experience. I know Chris Brunt's leaving at the end of the season, and he's an established Premier League player I've been a massive fan of over the years, so he'll be a big loss with his experience. And then for Brentford, again, like another really young side, lots of hype going into a new stadium, going to be filling that up with more supporters, getting a better atmosphere going. That could serve them quite well. Equally, we also know that if they're going to be going into the Premier League without a psychological home advantage, because they're going to be playing on an entirely new ground, that might not serve them well. We've seen over the years where moving to a new ground hasn't quite worked out the way that fans would have hoped. We've seen that with Arsenal. We've seen it particularly with West Ham. So it all depends on how this new stadium affects those players, because they've got some really good players in there. I'm a big fan of Ben Rafma. I've seen a lot of his clips on YouTube, and he looks like a very good player. So whatever I will say is that each of these sides have some very exciting young talents. And I think that's going to bode well for the entertainment factor in the Premier League next year. Whether or not they survive is a separate issue.
Yeah, and obviously we expect whoever goes up to make some sort of investment. Obviously, in a post-COVID world, finances are obviously going to be tighter, and maybe we'll see maybe a few more loan deals or free transfers or something like that. But we expect a few signings to be made. Joe, Dan, of the three that you think will go up, are you as confident as Luke that Leeds will stay up and the other two a bit less certain? Is that
okay? So I think Leeds, they will improve over the summer, and it's always hard to, it's a hard question because obviously we don't know what signings they're going to make. Just with a couple of signings, yes, because then you've still got Newcastle, who I almost think will definitely go down next season. And then, there are a couple of teams in the Premier League who are sort of just seemingly treading water. They never seem to improve. And if a team comes in like Leeds, who, are quite ambitious, I definitely think they'll be able to stay up. Brentford and West Brom are tougher. If we assume they go up, I think West Brom will be straight back down. And Brentford, I honestly think it could go either way. Just with side Ben Rama, I believe, going back to the Nathan Ferguson interview, it seems like an age. He was the only player who Nathan Ferguson said he had a bit of a problem playing against. I don't know if this has been discussed since then. But he said the left winger, he never actually said his name. He couldn't remember his name, but he said the left winger from Brentford, who I'm assuming would be better.
It is Benrahma, yeah.
Yeah. So that just goes to show that there is a lot of quality there, and whether I think he's been linked quite heavily with Chelsea. So if they can keep him, it'll certainly be sort of a benefit to them. And I'm looking forward to seeing him in the Premier League.
Yeah, Joe. I mean, I'm guessing you've similar opinions, but you've said Forest. Do you think? I mean, Forest obviously would have to keep Lamucci in the managerial job. I'm not sure how his deal's structured, but I believe it was a 1-year deal. Provided he stays, do you think Forest would be able to survive, or do you think they'd also struggle?
I mean, the atmosphere at the City Ground would definitely help them a little bit, but honestly, we're talking about this, like, I don't think any of these teams are going to do well in the Premier League in the long run. I can see, as Dan said, whether it's Brentford or Forest or anyone else, they go immediately down. West Bromwich Albion, I'm very happy Dan mentioned Nathan Ferguson, because we can now say, in the last week or so, Josh and I have been discussing this, one of the most consistent starters for West Brom when he's been fit this year, one of their most impressive defensive players, a young guy, he's been with the club for about 10 years, looks almost set to join Crystal Palace over this summer, irrespective of whether West Bromwich Albion actually get promoted. They may not even be able to hold on to the players that got them into the Premier League, let alone make good signings to keep them there. If there's one team that's going to survive, I do agree with Luke, it is going to be Leeds, partly because I think Marcelo Bielsa is far better, a far better manager than being in the Championship. That guy is, for me, is Premier League quality through and through. Spygate notwithstanding, which, to be fair, I don't think he did anything wrong anyway. However, the reason why Leeds survive won't be because they play good football. It won't be because of their good young players, and it won't be because of the signings they make over the summer. It will be because the bottom of the Premier League is now so poor that there will be 3 teams worse than them. And, in the second season, it could well be Leeds at the bottom of the table. That's my, I haven't got much hope for any of them.
Well, there we go. And again, thanks to Dan and Joe. They plugged the interview without being asked to, but there you go. So we do have that interview up on this. We are now on the RAW Sport YouTube channel, not the one under my name. We've now got a permanent home for these interviews. So yeah, if you want to find out what about our chat with Nathan Ferguson, I think it was in May now, so a month ago or so. You can find out a bit more about him. You've got that on the channel. Later tonight, I'm going to make public the interview Kylan and I did with Ryan Conway of The Athletic, Derby County's writer, which we did on Facebook, and then it will go up on our YouTube channel probably tonight. And then you've also got Dammy, who's unfortunately not been able to join us today. He and I did an interview with Ed Aarons, the Guardian Sports deputy editor. We did that on Wednesday, the day before, and pre-recorded it. And he's got a new book called Made in Africa, and it's about the history of African players in English football. It's a really fascinating read. I've read through the first few chapters. I've got it actually in my room. It's a really interesting book, so I recommend people check that out. But yeah, we've got a really interesting conversation with him about African football, what it was like to write this book, and some journalism tips as well. So we've got plenty of content coming up over the next week or so. I'm just trying to stagger it as much as I can. And yeah, we will get to La Liga next, but let's go through. I mean, we haven't really done updates from the Bundesliga games, and yes, Luke, it's a remarkable game in Dortmund where Andre Kramaric has scored 4 goals for Hoffenheim. Yeah, I don't think any of us are keeping tabs on this game, but certainly one to check out when this stream's over. Joe, Leverkusen Mainz, there's not been much change to the scoreboard, but are there any takeaways you've got from this game so far?
I mean, my overwhelming response is that my good luck in choosing Bundesliga games seems to have run out. Kevin Volland seems to have killed this game in the second minute. I'm not going to lie, Josh, I'm very glad that we've had such healthy discussion on this show, because this game has been about as insipid as I've seen since the Bundesliga's return. A total of 3 shots on target between both teams, 54 minutes in. It's not been a particularly entertaining afternoon. I think, Leverkusen know that destiny's not really in their hands. I mean, Mainz have had great form, but they haven't really got anything to play for at this stage. Yeah, I mean, I was expecting this game to actually be good, because both teams went into it with an awful lot of positivity, especially Mainz coming in. But no, it's not been a particularly interesting afternoon of football so far.
Yeah, and you talk about, I mean, if Leverkusen, I mean, they'd have been hoping for Champions League football as a pitch to keep Kai Havertz, but it looks like they're headed for the Europa League next season. Luke, you've been watching the Mönchengladbach Hertha Berlin game. Again, like the Leverkusen game, not much change on the scoreboard, but again, what as there anything that stood out to you throughout the action?
No, other than Mönchengladbach have looked pretty dominant. I mean, looking at how this game's going to go anyway, it's going to be under the assumption that Mönchengladbach only need a draw realistically to progress anyway. Hertha have looked good at points, but they haven't really threatened as much as they would have liked. And I say this is Hertha are on the attack. Luka Bakko's picked up the ball on the right wing. Cross has come in and it's easily claimed by Jan Sommer. Yeah, Mönchengladbach have at every point I've been watching this game, which has been sort of every 2 or 3 minutes. It's looked dominant. The ball's been in the possession of Borussia Mönchengladbach, and they've been in the Hertha Berlin half. It should be a fairly routine victory for them, to be honest. Hertha haven't really seemed at the races as much as they would have done, as much as they would have liked to have been, rather. I fully expect Mönchengladbach to just go at least get a draw from this game and take the 4th spot in the Bundesliga and go and get themselves some Champions League football for next year.
Oh, he's gone again.
Josh is muted.
Yeah. Wonderful. Sorted it.
We've all done it.
I've gone so long throughout this term, and finally in the last one it kind of breaks. Yeah, I was going to say the table there. It's not been updated with today's results, but as it stands, that is the table in terms of where the teams are going to finish. I'll do a quick roundup. As Joe has mentioned in the comment section, the big result at the moment is Union Berlin are 2-0 up at home to Fortuna Düsseldorf. It does mean at the moment they will be going down because Werder Bremen are now 4-0 up at home to Cologne. Davy Klaasen's now scored, the former Everton midfielder, in the second half. So that is a big result. At least a big pair of results in the Bundesliga at the moment. Other games, Michael Cuisance has scored for Bayern as they lead 2-0 at Wolfsburg. Freiburg is 3-0 up at home to Schalke. David Wagner's had a shocking run of results since the league's return, with Lucas Huller scoring. Again, Leipzig is still 1-0 up. Timo Werner's first half goal being the difference. And Eintracht Frankfurt lead Paderborn 3-1. Andre Silva and Bas Dost have scored for Frankfurt. And Drago got the consolation goal. And as we said, and as Luke pointed out to me, Kramaric is having a pretty great game by all, with 4 goals at Borussia Dortmund, who have probably just, after losing the league and knowing where they're going to finish, I think they've probably just gone, we're just going to play out the season. So I guess, I mean, there's not a whole lot to, I mean, Joe, did you want to wait? I mean, it's a Werder Bremen to stay up, well, not stay up, but go into the playoffs at least. That's a bit of I wouldn't say let off, but you look at how much they spend on their squad, it's a bit of a let off for them.
Honestly, I am so angry. I've been saying for so long that Werder Bremen, despite being so far down the table, would survive. Just yesterday, recording another podcast with Luke, I said the door had finally closed and they were going to get relegated. And now they're winning 4-0 against a team that I wasn't even...
They just scored again.
And I didn't even think they could win this game. And now Union Berlin, who, by the way, might just be the biggest surprise in European football this year, smashing Dusseldorf in a game that they just need to get a point from. I mean, the moment I predict something, it goes the other way. Werder Bremen, honestly, I was predicting they'd be challenging for Europe this year, so I'm kind of glad they escaped automatic relegation. But it's just typical. The moment I say something, the league goes entirely the other way. Interesting, but also sucks for Dusseldorf because they have actually been pretty good towards the end of the season.
Yeah, and they'll be interested in Rowan Hennings as well, should they go down, I'm sure, from other top flight teams. And as for Werder Bremen, there's some of their players definitely are talented, and they will be glad to avoid the automatic relegation and have a chance of keeping them should they win the playoff at least. So some interesting stuff there. And before we get to Spain, actually, you probably notice I'm wearing the Australian jersey because Australia and New Zealand this week were awarded the Women's World Cup for 2023 hosting duties, and I just want to give a quick shout out. They beat off Colombia, which was the rival bid. Colombia had a vastly lower technical score, I think, but UEFA's members went for the Colombia bid, which is an interesting move. But yes, Australia and New Zealand are going to get the Women's World Cup, and I am as taking off my host hat here and putting on my biased hat. I'm very excited for that, and I think it's going to be a great tournament. Let's get to. I don't know if anyone wants to comment on that before we move on to La Liga or not. Otherwise, let's plug in.
I think it's quite fitting that the hosting rights have gone to one of the places in the world that has advocated most for women's rights, and hopefully that will lead to the progression of the women's game more so than it would have done if it goes to another place. It would be like poetic in a way. That's all I have to say.
Absolutely. And here's hoping Sam Kerr is lifting that trophy in 2023. But enough about that. Let's look at La Liga, which obviously, Luke and Joe have also been watching closely as well. And I've actually watched both of Real Madrid's games this week since our last broadcast, so I can shed a bit of light on that as well. Real Madrid now top the table. I mean, we weren't too surprised. I think after the Sevilla draw on Friday, last Friday, we weren't surprised Real Madrid would capitalize. I mean, Luke or Joe, I don't know where you weigh in here, but Vinicius Jr. is on fire at the moment for Real Madrid. He looks a frightening player.
He seems to have found an end product, which is probably the biggest criticism we've had of Vinicius Jr. over the past couple of years. When he first joined Real Madrid, he was obviously this incredibly talented winger who, kind of as you'd expect from a Brazilian player, very good dribbler, lots of pace, could get himself into some really good goal-scoring positions, but never quite had that finishing touch. That's something that he's really added to his game recently. I mean, he nearly scored twice, let's not forget, in the game against Mallorca. He had a really good game and just provided that real direct threat that we know that he can provide for Real Madrid. And, particularly when they've had Hazard injured at points this season, the ability for him to go and step up and really stake a claim and a spot in that Real Madrid side, and the fact that he's just so young as well, it's only something that's positive for Zinedine Zidane and gives him a really good selection headache when considering the amount of wide depth that Real Madrid have in that side. Very impressed with him this year, and I'm really excited to see where he progresses next year, because we could see him really go and step up and become one of the best players in La Liga, because he's got all the talent for it.
Yeah, Joe, you look like you have something to say. I can't tell.
Oh, well, that's just my concentrating face. There's not really that much I can add to. There's not much I can add to what Luke's already said about Vinicius Jr. He's had a fantastic return to form this year. The fact that he's keeping Eden Hazard out of that position is impressive enough. What I would say about Hazard, yes, he's been unimpressive this year, but you've got to remember how bad Courtois was last year, and he's improved a hell of a lot this year. Hazard is not an old player by any means. Zidane, this second iteration of Zidane's Madrid feels very, I don't know about you guys, but it feels very different to the first one, which may have won 3 Champions Leagues, but felt like it was decaying year by year. I think we're going to see the next season could be one of the best seasons we ever see from Eden Hazard. You combine that with Vinicius Jr. playing on either the left or the right, which he can. Benzema doesn't look like he's dropping off anytime soon. This Real Madrid team could comfortably win La Liga next year, and it goes without saying Champions League contenders. Granted, they still are this year, but you can't not include them in that conversation. They really have improved over the course of this year, so all power to them.
Yeah, and they made some. Zidane threw up some selection surprises against Sociedad. Their 2-1 win. James Rodriguez started for the first time since October, which was I don't want to say I forgot he was playing at Real Madrid, but I did. It did certainly raise a lot of eyebrows. And then Gareth Bale got the start against Mallorca on Wednesday, so they've certainly got strength and depth. And I'll ask Dan. I don't know if you've necessarily seen Real Madrid in action of late, but what? Looking at Real Madrid currently, you see the mix of youth and the mix of experience as well. What do you make of Real Madrid, this current version of them?
Don't actually think they'll win La Liga this season. Having said that, I think Barcelona and Real Madrid are going in opposite directions. I think they're in the process of selling Arthur, who's one of the best up-and-coming centre mids in the world, and signing Pjanic, who's 29, 30. Everyone's saying he's past it. They've also got Griezmann, who's 29, Messi, who's 33, Suarez, who's 31, Coutinho's 32, and Jordi Alba, who's 30 or something like that. And you look at Madrid, and they've got this young core of players. I think they're going in completely opposite directions, and I think that's down to the sort of structure that each club has. I think with Barcelona, you'll see a big drop off when Messi finally retires because he's carrying them at the moment, and I think Real Madrid are only going to get better. I think at the moment they're still slightly behind. You'd say the big teams of the present moment time. They've lost against the first leg of the Champions League, 1-0, and now is it neutral venues? Is it neutral venues? Has that been decided yet? Whether the Champions League will be neutral venues?
I think they're playing in Lisbon, to my knowledge, like a mini knockout tournament.
Right. But I still think they'll get knocked out by Man City in the Champions League this season. Having said that, I think it's going to be a very promising future for that.
Yeah, interesting. I mean, interesting you say that. You think Barca? Did I catch this right? You think Barca might still win this title?
Barca will still win La Liga this season, but I think Barcelona are peaking or are coming off a peak and are only going to get worse, and Real Madrid are only going to get better next season.
Yeah, we can talk about Barca. Joe, I don't know. I mean,
yeah,
you go
there is. I mean, this was on myself and Luke's last podcast, but I'm going to say it here anyway because I still can't get over the figures involved in this. So I was obviously looking into stories about the Artur Pjanic trade yesterday, and obviously, I mean, I'm with Dan on this. It makes very little sense from Barcelona. You can tell that they're in financial desperation. They need to recoup 67 million euros before the 30th of June. That's in 3 days' time, and the sale of Artur bringing Pjanic the other way, despite a net loss of 6 years in terms of the player. And I'd actually argue Artur's been better than Pjanic this year. They're still only making 15 million. So that's a massive issue. The COVID-19 pandemic, which has shut the club museum, might cost them up to 60 million in revenue because Barcelona have that facility, which is, to my knowledge, makes more than any other club museum in world football. There may be a few exceptions. That I can imagine if Manchester United have a similar facility, they might increase it. But I was looking into Barcelona's wage situation. We've lambasted clubs like Man City, Real Madrid, PSG, Bayern Munich for overpaying players for years. And for most of these clubs, the wages of the players takes up just over 50% of the club's income for the year, however massive that income is. Barcelona's wage bill takes up 69% of their income year on year, despite a relatively low net spend in terms of transfers. The average salary at FC Barcelona, average salary is 11 million euros a year. I was doing some comparative research into this with Luke. A lot of Liverpool salaries are admittedly based on performance bonuses, so they can increase with good performances. The highest base salary for Liverpool, Mohamed Salah, earns 11.4 million. Premier League champions, well over 20 points clear of the next best team in the Premier League, highest is 11.4. Barcelona, as Dan says, terrible trajectory, and it's a crisis entirely of their own making as well. Average is 11 million. That is an unforgivable wage bill. And if you're looking at the squad they have, it's not really a situation that they can easily get out of either. They can't exactly sell these players to many clubs, not without taking on, as we were saying, with the likes of Arda Turan on loan, a significant portion of their exorbitant wage bill.
Yeah, look, they've been linked with Lautaro Martinez, and we'll talk about Inter Milan when we talk about Serie A. They've been linked with him for so long, and I mean the various tactics they've used, from trying to do swap deals to trying to see if they could lower the price. It just I don't know, Luke, and I know you've written about Barca for the sport as well, but it's just they're in a very I don't really know. They're just in it seems, I don't want to say precarious, but they are in a bit of a dangerous situation at the moment.
Precarious would imply that they're on the verge of being in a situation that's dangerous to the club. The fact is that they're already in it. Looking at from the very top, if you look at what Bartomeu's done, I mean, he came in fairly controversial circumstances with regards to the Neymar deal, and he kind of got cleared of that. And but he just has this really weird power complex at the club where he has to kind of impose his own will on the club, and anyone who disagrees with him is wrong and must be sacked and be replaced. And we've seen a lot of Barcelona's directors and vice presidents leave while he's been in charge. This on top of the fact that he's had major disputes with Lionel Messi, who, to be honest, yields more power at the club than anybody else at any other football club in world football. Messi, Messi's even threatened to run down his contract if Barcelona doesn't leave. So that's a massively dangerous situation for Barcelona, considering they are not in a position where they have a squad capable of replacing Messi and reverting to a new style of play. They rely on Messi to score their goals and to get them high up the table and into the echelons of the Champions League that Barcelona fans expect of them. This on top of the fact that their squad is aging, their best players, looking at in defence, like Gerard Piqué, midfield Sergio Busquets, and then up front Lionel Messi and Luis Suarez, and even to an extent Antoine Griezmann. They're all aging players. They've got some good young talents coming through, looking at Ansu Fati and Ricky Puig to name a couple. But the fact is that Barcelona don't have the same fear factor that they had a couple of years ago, and they have an incredibly thin squad that isn't working out. They've overpaid on players who have drastically underperformed. Looking at Dembele, Coutinho, and Griezmann to name the big three culprits. Barcelona are in really bad shape, and their number one priority right now has to be keeping Messi tied down to a long-term contract, even if that means giving him a 5-year deal that's worth £1 million a week. You keep Messi on your books. You hope that he can carry you through until Bartomeu's term expires, which is the end of 2021, I believe. And then you bring in a competent person to replace him as club president. And then Barcelona should be able to move forward as a club and make some more astute signings and then look to start transitioning away from the Messi model that they currently have. The problem is right now Barcelona are in a massive mess. They rely too much on Messi and they need to keep him happy because at the minute he isn't. He's dragged way too much into the politics of the club, and it's all going to come crashing down on them if they don't play it safely.
Yeah, this is also. We are sounding off on Barcelona, but with good reason. They are in a very, very big mess at the moment. And we should say they beat Athletic Club on Tuesday night, I believe, and then today, after we finish our stream, they will be traveling to Celta Vigo, who and we can switch over to them switch over to the relegation battle, because as far as I know, the top half, everyone's done. We can we can mention something about Villarreal in a bit, but Celta Vigo, who have had a pretty big week. They beat Alaves 6-0. Then they beat Sociedad 1-0 away, and Iago Aspas is doing the job. He's
doing it again,
saving Celta Vigo.
He's clawing that mess of a club to safety. Yeah, it's absolutely bizarre considering on paper, I mean, we've discussed with Joe so many times this season, on paper, Celta Vigo do have a very strong squad, particularly relative to their position. The difference is that they haven't really improved from last season at all. They lost Maxi Gomez, who's their main goal threat other than Aspas over the summer. They brought in Santi Mina in a swap deal from Valencia, and he's really not done the job for them. He scored a couple of goals, but nowhere near the amount of goal output that they got from Maxi Gomez rather. Aspas, I mean, I've doubted him at many points this season. I just wondered if maybe this was going to be the year that he fell off and was no longer to claw them to safety. But again, it just seems like he's able to do it. He's scoring penalties, which are incredibly high pressure, and they're just scraping through matches because they do have quite a strong defence. Celta, they've also got a relatively easy run in. They should survive without any hassle. The sides that are below them now, Espanyol have sacked their manager. They did that this morning. Abelardo, they're now onto their fourth manager of the season, which for a club that started the year in the Europa League is absolutely bonkers. Espanyol are in a mess. Leganés don't have any goal scorers, and then Mallorca, they fought well, but they just don't have the quality to stay up. So it looks like Celta Vigo, again, in a bit of a West Ham situation where they haven't really performed well this season, but they just seem to have just that little bit more than the other teams around them to stay up. They're going to be fine. But the fact is that they're playing Barcelona this afternoon, and this fixture for Barcelona has typically been a bit of a banana skin because Barcelona haven't won on their last 5 trips to Celta Vigo, so it's going to be a really interesting one.
Yep, ooh, hello, Echo. Hello. This is cool. Actually, that game is just kicked off for Celta Vigo Barcelona. And I don't know who's. I'm gonna politely ask if someone is got on echo. Could you just? There we go. Have I got it? Yeah, I think I've got it. Yep. Okay, I think we're good. Yeah. Sorry, Dan. Oh gosh, I've lost my train of thought. No, I'm back. Yeah. So Celta, I think Joe, I think you probably would agree with this point being that we think the three at the bottom will probably. I mean, Celta Vigo have had some big wins. Eibar picked up a win against Valencia as well. So, we think that it's going to be those three teams at the bottom then. Mallorca, Leganés, and Espanyol.
I mean, it's again annoying. It's just contrary to whatever I or Luke says on the Eurozone Football podcast, is that we hype up this relegation battle that's going to be so fascinating till the end of the season, and all of a sudden Espanyol fail to pick up any of the wins that they should have, and Celta Vigo motor away, which is just incredibly frustrating. I don't see it changing massively. Obviously, we still have a bit of the season left to go. Celta Vigo could definitely collapse, as could Eibar, but it's a 6-point gap between 17th and 18th at this stage. I honestly have been impressed at times by every single team in this division. I think Celta Vigo have had some excellent games. Some individual players for them this year have been exceptional, not just Iago Aspas. But the salient point is that their biggest issue is goal scoring, and it is still extremely immoral that they were able to sign Nolito out of the transfer window when Leganés were not able to replace Martin Braithwaite or indeed Youssef En-Nesyri, who they sold to Sevilla in January. So Leganés are ultimately going to go down, not because they've performed badly, but because they've been systematically screwed over. Mallorca have actually done very well with the squad that they've had to stay up for as long as they have. It looked for a lot of the season like they would survive on performance. The only real disappointment for me in that stage of the table is Espanyol. They have underperformed this year, and it is just an example of, yes, they got into the Europa League last year, but when you lose your top goal scorer, you lose the manager that also took you there in Rubi, who incidentally got sacked by Real Betis earlier this week. What mattered at Espanyol last year in terms of the core personnel just isn't there anymore. And, I don't think it's a case of Europa League pressure weakening them. Luke and I perhaps speculated that, too many fixtures in the first half of the season would damn them in the second. That just hasn't been the case. Espanyol were underperforming in the league in the first half of the season. And even despite massive signings in January that really do improve this team on paper, they haven't made the most out of them in the second half. And if they do get relegated, there are a hell of a lot of impressive players in that team. I'm looking at Mark Roca above everyone else that are going to be desperate to move to other clubs.
Yeah, I'll just quickly say, by the way, for those watching, Dan Rav had to head off. So if you see he is missing, that is why. He emptied his Man United takes, and we are very appreciative for that. And yeah, I think I agree with you too. I think the three at the bottom are probably going to go down. I actually was watching the Madrid Mallorca game and saw Luca Romero make his little cameo, which was exciting. And for those who don't know who he is now the youngest player to play in La Liga at 15 years old, which is it makes one. I mean, I'm not. I don't want to speak for you two, but it makes me feel very old. And I now look back at Wellsing at 15, and I was certainly not.
So he was born a month before Messi's debut.
Yeah,
that's interesting stat.
It's insane.
I mean, it makes Martin Ødegaard look like a pensioner by comparison. It's quite scary.
Yeah, and he's been saddled with, I think he's known as the Mexican Messi. I think I've seen that nickname thrown around. So he's saddled with
I hate these nationality Messi nicknames because they never work out.
I mean, the funny thing is, I think he's eligible for Argentina and Mexico, and I think he's represented Argentina in these age group category tournaments. So it's likely he does
help. To be fair, the hair is very Messi 2006.
He's living his best life. He looks like he's just rocked up from watching Disney Channel with that kind of that hairdo and then training pitch. But yes, he's making us feel very old, and also I'm self-indulged here, but I really enjoyed Kubo's performance, and
Yeah.
I actually wrote that he might be ahead of Odegaard in the pecking order for loanees from his performances this
Could
season.
be. Odegaard has massively underperformed since the restart. Sociedad have looked terrible, absolutely diabolical. And this was the side that we were half expecting we're going to finish top 4, and now it seems like a bit of a pipe dream. They've got a really crucial game on Monday against Getafe, who are they're kind of rivals for top 4. Villarreal are also in that position. They've managed to string together a run of results. Paco Alcacer has been absolutely massive for them. The top 4 race for La Liga could end up being the most exciting of all. It looked like it was going to be more or less done and dusted, but Sevilla just don't have the consistency required to kill off any sort of challenge. Atletico Madrid have pulled away. I think everyone's really going to expect them to go and finish top 4 now. It's just a matter of, can Sevilla hold on, and can Villarreal or Valencia or Real Sociedad or Getafe get themselves back into that position. The one on Monday between Getafe and Sociedad is going to be one to keep an eye on, because it is one of those where a draw is no good for either team. It's a matter of who can get the result. And I for one, I'm going to be keeping an eye on it. But no, as I said, Odegaard not been particularly great since the restart. Lacked any sort of creativity in that Sociedad side. He was the main creator in that side, but they haven't had it recently. And their goal scoring suffered as a result, and their results. I genuinely think that Kubo, I can see why Real Madrid would consider Kubo above him, because Kubo's been playing in a worse team, but still looks like the more exciting player at this moment.
Yep, and he's definitely someone to keep an eye on. Obviously, he nearly played for Barcelona as well, and Real Madrid then swooped for him when he was, I think, 16 or 17. So that's another one where the Real Madrid hierarchy's got one over the Barcelona hierarchy. I mean, the left in my notes is obviously Bruno Soriano making his comeback for Villarreal. Big occasion for him. He's been out for, I think, a lot. I can't remember exactly how many days, but he's been out for a long time with knee injuries. So that was nice to see. And also Santi Cazorla's resurgence lives on. It's fair to say, as they make a late push for that European spot. I don't think we had them in the ticker last week, but they've jumped to 6 now, and they look very good. So I think I will do a quick update before we turn to Serie A. I know, Luke, there's been a goal in your game, so do you want to, I don't know if you saw it or not, but do you want to give a quick update on that?
I didn't see it, but I have seen that Borussia Mönchengladbach, ending all chance of losing out on top 4, have scored to make it 2-0 against Hertha Berlin. Brel and Bolo with that goal. He's looked very impressive all game. I'll give it a run through it now. So it's from a short corner. And in Bolo, Storms' boy wasn't player. It was, I believe it was player who storms into the box, pokes it towards the back post, and Bolo's there to poke it home. They'll be happy with that. Now I've actually leapfrogged Leipzig into 3rd place, which is quite interesting. But there must have been an equaliser in the Leipzig game, I'm assuming.
And there is Ruben Vargas has scored
which
for
is interesting,
Augsburg.
because Augsburg was sent down to 10 men.
Actually, I correct that because Timo Werner's just scored, so make that 2-1 for Leipzig. So Leipzig now jump back
into 3rd place. But nonetheless, Mönchengladbach, they've had a very good season. People have found them very exciting to watch. We've watched them from afar. Their front 3 in particular have been a really big highlight. I think I've mentioned it earlier. I think Marco Rose has done a really good job there. And they fully deserve Champions League football. Leverkusen, they've had a very good season as well, but they just haven't been able to get themselves over the line. That's all I have to say. Leverkusen yet again.
Yeah, I mean, Joe and I will know. I think defensively, oh goodness.
What do you mean no? It's Leverkusen. They never win anything. They never get what they want.
Luke, we gathered that much. Come on. All I can add to this is a short point. Like I'm thinking through as we come towards the end of these seasons, I'm trying to think like MVP for each team. Players of the year for the league, managers of the year. I can't think of many Bundesliga managers, if any, if we're considering whole season performance, that go ahead of Marco Rose for manager of the year. Yeah, I mean, Union Berlin have had an absolutely staggering season. I'd argue that's a lot due to individual performances. That whole Borussia Mönchengladbach team, which admittedly is very good, But Marco Rose has really gotten the best out of them. There are a lot.
Yeah.
The fact that they're still battling with Leipzig for third place, despite also having to hold off Leverkusen, it's more of a compliment to the competitive nature of the Bundesliga than it is towards like the teams around them necessarily. It's, you know, I've been staggered by how well Marco Rose has done. I didn't believe the hype at the beginning of the year when he came in from Salzburg. I do now. Want a manager absolutely to watch over the next 5 years or so. I don't know whether he is my number one manager of the season after what Hansi Flick's done at Bayern, but he's definitely in contention. They've had a fantastic season, and they are my favourite club in Germany, so I'm not going to complain.
They're also a very good defensive team, which I don't know how much that gets talked about. As well as
Nico Elvedi is one of the best, one of the best young centre backs in the world, and so someone that Luke and I used to talk about, especially at the beginning of the season. Oscar Wendt at left back
he's not played much for them.
Yeah, not much later on in the second half of the season, but at the beginning of the season, he was genuinely brilliant, like genuinely one of the best left backs going on performance, if not on terms of raw ability. So he's gotten the best out of these players, even though some of them have declined towards the end of the season. He's still been able to put a great team of 11 players on the pitch in difficult circumstances. All power to Gladbach. You know, they've been a Champions League quality team, but there are much bigger teams in this league on paper that should have finished ahead of them.
I mean, they've had Dennis Zakaria injured for this bit of this season. Jan Sommer's had a great season goal. Ben Sebaini's been big for them as well. They're a very good team, and if you're new to German football, they're one to keep an eye out for, and definitely to watch out for. As I think we've alluded to, I think the Leverkusen game is still 1-0, Joe. So I'm guessing there's not a whole lot to add.
Honestly, I'm actually sad that Dan has gone, because it's one less talking head I can look at rather than watching this game. It's not. Right. Don't get me wrong. It's not a bad game by any means. It's not. I've seen a lot worse on RAW Sport Super Saturday. But it's not an interesting one. I mean, Mainz have not been making much of an effort. 68% possession for Leverkusen, which is more than I would expect them to have in most fixtures. They know destiny's not in their hands. I don't know whether they're happy with Europa League football. I personally wouldn't be, if you want to keep the likes of Kevin Volland and Kai Havertz around. A very good season for Leverkusen. What's happened?
Sorry, just breaking news. Ian Robben is going to be playing for Groningen. He's rejoined. He's come out of retirement. He's been playing for Groningen.
Oh wow! Hang on, this is exciting.
This is very exciting news.
I mean, he's 36 years old, and he spent his youth career. So he started out at Groningen. So this is certainly a bit of a homecoming kind of situation for him. I mean, did he officially retire? Was he a free agent?
Yeah, he was. He officially retired, and because it was his whole. There was a whole thing of because he retired very young. There was kind of the suspicion that he could have gone back into professional football. But the fact so I'm reading up on it now. So he had apparently been training at Bayern Munich's training ground all season. So he's in good enough shape. And that's immensely exciting. It's going to be really, particularly when they introduce the Bundesliga, which is going to happen because I called it. That's going to be a really good marketing campaign for that league. If Groningen even get it, I don't know where they are in the league.
They're not as high as they probably should be for their size. But I mean, not to make a comparison to a sport you don't follow, Luke, but it feels very Rob Gronkowski, doesn't it, Josh? It takes a very high class player, takes a year out, comes back. I mean, admittedly, comes back to a team that are kind of chasing glory in what will be a Bundesliga. I think Groningen will just about make it in. If I understand the concept.
They'll take 10 teams. They'll take 10 teams from the Eredivisie, and they are 9th at the moment. Wow.
Yeah.
But in terms of points per game, they finished 9th this year. So that'll be fun.
There we go. Breaking news. And speaking of, I wouldn't say breaking news, but breaking certainly goal tallies. I mean, Werder Bremen are 6-1 up at home to Cologne, which is insane. Josh Sargent is
right.
And Osaka.
I have a theory about this. The latest Eurozone football podcast, where I criticise Florian Kohfeldt and Werder Bremen, has one listener on Mixcloud. It was Florian Kohfeldt, and he has come out this afternoon just to spite me for saying his team were definitely going down. They've had this quality all year. The roster's got so many good players on it that have not performed all damn season. They finally bring it out on the final day. They could still get relegated in the relegation playoff, let's not forget. But Man, I'm just seething that yet again I'm wrong in such a crucial game.
I mean, who saw that coming? Joe definitely didn't. Bayern Munich are 4-0 up, and we should probably say Lewandowski was given Player of the Season, the Bundesliga Player of the Season. He scored again, so I think that's his 34th goal of the season. And Thomas Muller's also scored. They are 4-0 up, Bayern at home, not at home, at away to Wolfsburg. Freiburg lead Schalke 4-0. They've got definitely some questions, and obviously with Nubel going, they've got a bit of work to do. Union Berlin are 3-0 up now. Union Berlin are 3-0 up now, so I think Dusseldorf, I think that's curtains. It's curtains on them. Sorry, Joe. And Frankfurt now lead Paderborn 3-2. So Paderborn are really giving their last game for the season a real go before they go down to the Spy Bundesliga. Speaking of, I mean, you talk about Robin. We can talk about the league that his ex-partner in crime is playing in, and that's Serie A, with me making a clumsy link to Ribery.
There, Josh. Brilliant,
yeah,
brilliant stuff.
I know, it's getting to me.
His partner in crime was Robert Lewandowski, for God's sake.
No, it wasn't. It was always Ribery.
Robbery. That was their nickname.
Yeah.
That was their ship name. If ship names apply in football. But let's have a look at Serie A. I was saying to Joe, I was catching up on the highlights this morning, and I think the big result this week, Joe, was probably the Atalanta-Lazio game. I mean, we said it was going to be a very entertaining game to watch last week, and lo and behold, it delivered.
Yeah, I mean, I've talked about this game an awful lot with multiple different people this week. Very, very entertaining. And it's, I would say there's no shame in losing away at Atalanta. Goals per game, the highest scoring team in the top 5 divisions this year. And if you look at the way they play, to quote Paulo Fonseca, the Roma manager, he who thinks he can play football against Atalanta thinks wrong. He said that before they wiped Valencia out of the Champions League. So clearly he's talking sense. I honestly think Atalanta can overhaul Inter for 3rd place on current form. Genuinely do believe that. Despite the thinness of their squad, I reckon they're going to hold on to Champions League football. For Lazio, I really don't think it's a bad loss by any means. I can see Juventus dropping an awful lot of points. The reason that they're currently 7 points ahead is because they've played an extra game, the 4-0 win against Lecce, which I saw most of last night. They did look very good, in fairness. Although, again, it took a red card for Fabio Lucione of Lecce before they could really open them up. So, I still am going to hold to my prediction that Lazio are going to win the Scudetto. You know how much that pains me to say. Don't read too much into this game in terms of the significance for the league, but you can read into it in terms of the entertainment. You've got 2 absolutely stunning goals from Milinkovic, Savic and Malinovsky, a game that consistently changed hands, and another fantastic performance at left back from Robin Gosens, who has low-key been one of the best left backs in world football this year. Genuinely.
I think so. I think he and Raf Guerra for Dortmund have certainly lifted their profile and their market value as well. As you said, Lazio play Fiorentina tonight, which is Ribery's team.
They should smash them.
Circle. Yeah, I mean, we've got them on the bottom half ticker. They are Fiorentina at 14th at the moment. They're not quite the side that was challenging for Europe a few years ago. But we talked about Arta going to Juventus, and one of the things I was tempted to tweet, I have to say, was I wonder what Rabiot's mum thinks, because obviously Rabiot's mum is his agent, and didn't want him to come back early, and now Rabiot is probably going to lose his place. You look at Juve's midfield, Luke. We've talked about Arta leaving at the Leeds Barcelona side. Do you think he makes the starting lineup for Juve next season?
So Arta's a really interesting player. I've read a stat the other day. I think he's only completed. So he's played for Barcelona for 2 years, I think, and he's only completed 90 minutes twice in those 2 years. He's either been brought on as a sub or he's been brought off at some point in the game, which suggests maybe a fitness issue. Maybe it's a recurring injury. We don't know. Maybe it's a tactical thing that managers decide to bring him off whenever they possibly can. Unlikely, but who knows? The fact is with Arta, if Juventus are willing to sanction this deal, we know with Maurizio Sarri that he is really particular about the players, particularly the midfielders that he uses. He likes to have midfielders who fill very specific roles. I wouldn't have expected Juventus to have gone for Arta if they didn't think that or if Sarri didn't think that he would fit perfectly into his system. We've seen him sack off players like Emre Can already this year because he didn't think that he would fit the system. And obviously Sarri, well, I would expect and hope that Sarri has a plan to use Arthur and maximize his abilities, because there's clearly a talent there. He's still a very good player. He's very young as well, so he can maybe be a bit more tactically malleable than Pjanic would be. I don't know if necessarily he's going to be the player to take Juventus to the next level, i.e. he's going to be the one to help them win Champions Leagues, but he is nonetheless, I think, an upgrade on Pjanic, particularly in the long term. And let's face it, they're getting the better deal out of this. Pjanic, for all of his abilities and his quality, hasn't been the same player that he was probably around 2 or 3 years ago. Sort of 2016-17 season, I think that was when Pjanic was at the peak of his powers. I don't think he's at that level anymore. So to sack him off now, get him to a club that is in complete disarray, and you can take advantage of their situation, is just really good business from Juventus. And to get a good player like Arthur and that in return, absolutely no risk-free, no way of losing deal for them.
Yeah, and it feels like the rich getting richer at this point, and they as Joe said, big win last night against Lecce. They also beat Bologna on Monday night. Inter had a very interesting week as well. They beat Sampdoria 2-1. 2 really good team goals, by the way, in that game, and then had another interesting game against Sassuolo, to say the least. And Joe, you've got thoughts. I do want to add the news that it looks like Hakimi, on loan at Dortmund, Real Madrid's right back, is heading to Inter for, I think it's a 40 million euro move, at least initially. This Inter team's already a pretty good one, and surely Hakimi strengthens that right hand side even further.
I mean, it's very, very fitting, isn't it? I can't even remember. I might even have been yesterday with Luke again. I said what Inter really needed. They don't need to go out and make massive signings across the board. They just need a little bit of reinforcement, primarily in that sort of wing back area. Because, I mean, we might talk about the Sassuolo game a little bit, but Ashley Young, after coming on for Cristiano Biraghi, I mean, Biraghi had a great game. Ashley Young had an absolute shocker. People who honestly think he's an improvement on Biraghi on that left-hand side are clueless. The thing about Hakimi specifically is he's not just a right back, he's a right wing back, which we know Antonio Conte loves. We know how much he can get out of those players. We know how much he can develop those players. So if you're looking at Hakimi's personal career relative to a Real Madrid team that he probably won't get into, and a Borussia Dortmund team that he's already done an awful lot at, I would have liked to see him at Dortmund for another year, but Inter, I'm quite disappointed in myself that I didn't see that as a potential destination for him. He can get into the team. Obviously, they tried an experiment with Valentin Lazaro last summer. Didn't end up working. Injury prone. Doesn't exactly fit the team perfectly. I mean, even though the likes of Antonio Candreva have played well out there, they can't go on forever. And Candreva is much more of a winger than a wing back. Hakimi makes an awful lot of sense, and it's a fee that is a hell of a lot less than I would have expected. It's just another good deal from the Inter Milan board. I'm just hoping they're not paying him too much, because their wage bill with the likes of Godin is inflating at a quite worrying rate. But yeah, Inter, they're not going to win the league this year. They've dropped way too many points. That game against Sassuolo is basically a meme, but they can go again next year. There are very few players in that team that will not be as good, if not better, next season. So Antonio Conte, the project is still very much a go.
Yeah, and it's, I mean, look, Hakimi on one side, and surely they will look to bring in someone on the left. Because I also agree with you. I don't think Ashley Young is. I think Ashley Young's a bit of a short-term thing.
They've got Biraghi, and he's great. Like, I mean, with the possible, I mean, Emerson Palmieri is great. Don't get me wrong, but I mean, Biraghi is definitely a contender for that left back position for Italy. Like, he's a really good player. It kind of annoys me how few people actually know him. But yeah, I mean, I don't think you need an upgrade on him necessarily. It's working out what the hell you do on the right, because Victor Moses and Candreva, yeah, they suit Antonio Conte, but they're not the star player that Achraf Hakimi is, and indeed can be, over the next few years.
Well, there you go. You've just promoted Biraghi there. There you go, for the uninformed. So there's your platform. Atalanta in fourth. They could catch Inter for that third spot. That would be an interesting race. And then you've got Roma, Napoli, Milan. So those are the teams they're scrapping for, I guess. Well, Roma have an outside chance of getting Champions League. I don't think Napoli and Milan do. And then I guess we look at. I mean, I don't know if you guys have anything to add to the top half of Serie A before we get to the bottom half. Anything else to say, or I mean, you guys, I'm guessing, are still confident Lazio are gonna. I mean, we've heard it from you, Joe, but I'm guessing Luke, you're confident Lazio are gonna topple the old
I'm
lady.
confident, but
yeah, not confident, but
I would say that I think they can do it purely on the basis that I don't think this Juventus side is as strong as it has been in recent years. I think if you'd asked me 2 years ago when Napoli were chasing Juventus, the reason Juventus didn't lose out is because they were just too strong at the end of the day. I don't think that this Juventus side quite has that same fear factor or strength in the side. So I think if they're going to be catchable any year, I think it's going to be this one, and I think Lazio can do it.
There we go. Yeah, and we will wait to see what happens then. And I guess I'm guessing, Joe, I know I mean, the bottom two look pretty much done, Spal and Brescia, and then I guess it's a bit like the Premier League, really, where you've got a number of teams that could slide into that 18th spot. Lecce obviously currently occupy it, but there's I would say Udinese down pretty vulnerable.
I mean, the problem is, unlike the Premier League, is that all of the teams sort of down to 19th have actually been very good. I was very impressed with Sampdoria when they played Inter. I was even more impressed by them in the game and in our return game against Roma, and coming to the Olimpico, taking the lead legitimately. Granted, it came from a mistake, but they held the game well. They created chances. Ranieri's done a great job with them. They don't look like a team that should go down. Neither did Genoa, despite getting smashed by Parma, who have massively overperformed again. I'd maybe throw Lecce into that 18th position, but that is literally only because of the goals they've shipped in the last couple of weeks. For most of the season, they've played really, really well. Fabio Liverani has been the manager that they needed all year long. The quality of the players that have struggled to get onto the bench for Lecce this year, let alone actually play for them, is quite shocking for a team as small as they are. I'm going to say Lecce are going to go down based on current form, but the truth is, Josh, I don't think they necessarily deserve it. And whichever one of these teams goes down, they will be the best team I've ever seen go down in Serie A in the 10 years or so that I've acutely followed it. Really, I'm just really, really impressed by them. As for Spal and Brescia, just quickly, Spal were never going to survive. You know, they massively overperformed last year. It's Bournemouth times 10. They were never going to survive for a second season. I don't think they've done too badly. Brescia are the only team in this league that can really be ashamed with how they've done, not necessarily on the pitch, but off the pitch especially. The Mario Balotelli situation that's currently developing at the moment, terminating his contract. Literally his boyhood club shoving him out. They haven't treated him well. Granted, his attitude's been terrible this year, but you know, he's also suffered at the hands of the, quite frankly, disgraceful ultras. Team issues, just, you know, Brescia have really let me down this year. Of the three teams that came up, I thought they would be the only one who survived. And Hellas Verona have embarrassed me an awful lot.
Yeah, and with Brescia, I mean, you talk about the race to get Jack Grealish. It'll be a race to get Sandro Tonali for sure.
Oh, the fact they've still got him. I don't know how they made it through January without someone signing him. Seriously, there isn't a single top club in Europe, I don't think, that couldn't do with Sandro Tonali, at least as a backup. Like, he's an improvement on so many starting defensive midfielders for like top six teams in the Prem, in La Liga, in Liga, anywhere. When I did team of the season with Luke recently, team of the season so far, I should say, with the caveat that we were only allowed to pick one player from each team, Sandro Tonali was my choice of DM. He's been that excellent. There are a couple of others like Andrea Cistana in defence. You know, Brescia have had some great players who've played great this year, but they just haven't been good, and that's why they're lost ultimately.
Yeah, and I mean, that is the season that will finish its season last, I believe, in the European football calendar, or at least at the major 5 leagues. So plenty of football, and I think this is I'm looking at the Bundesliga scores now as we kind of come to the end of this show. Luke, there was still time for Hertha to score, it seems.
Yeah, did they?
I
completely forgot that a match was going on.
I've got it here.
Yeah, they did get a goal at the end.
Yeah.
Let's see. Please be on tech. Oh, Zibashevich.
Ibishevich.
Yeah, actually, he's out of contract, and there's a couple of really interesting contract issues going on at Hertha. Ibišević and Pekarik both out of contract this summer. They've already confirmed that Per Killian Shelbrad, who's been playing for the club since 2013, he's going to be leaving the club, which is quite sad. He's been a massively good servant to them over the years. Michael Grujic is going back on loan from going back to Liverpool, but I'm sure they'll be able to get him back on loan if they wish to do so. Yeah, interesting end to the Bundesliga though. Hertha Berlin, as I expected, to put up a bit of a fight towards the end of the season. They kind of have done that. They're going to be really interesting to watch next year. I have to admit, I don't know if I'm becoming marginally less confident in their European aspirations week by week. This summer's going to be massive for them. If they can get back, if they can secure sort of short-term deals for the likes of Pekarik and Ibišević, and then bring back the likes of Marko Grujic from their parent clubs, then they could have a really good shot of going in for the Europa League football next year. But I have to say, looking at the competition, looking at what Hoffenheim have done to Borussia Dortmund today, it's not going to be an easy battle by any stretch of the imagination.
Yeah, and we've enjoyed covering Bundesliga throughout this term, as that's been the only football we've had to cover this term. But it's been a fascinating league. I won't run through all the scores, but I guess the headlines being Werder Bremen smashed Cologne 6-1 and are now in 16th place to Joe's chagrin. Düsseldorf lost, I think it's 3-0. They lost to
Union.
Okay. Yeah, they lost 3-0 to Union Berlin. Schalke, I believe, when the league restarted, were in 6th place. They're now 12th, which is
they have been the worst.
They've been so poor.
They've been the worst team in the Bundesliga since the return. They've played worse than Paderborn. They've played worse than any other team in the league.
Oh, yikes. They've slid and then Kramaric destroyed Dortmund on the final day, which means Hoffenheim get automatically into Europa League qualification, and Wolfsburg will have to go through the qualifying rounds. So there was a bit of position swap there on the table. It's been, it's been a fascinating last 7 weeks of football that we've had. I have two questions really to finish off. I know, Joey, you were exam saddled for some of the weeks, but any takeaways from covering the Bundesliga this term? I'll start with Luke, because you've had a bit more of a sample size. But any takeaways?
Takeaways from the Bundesliga, probably that I still prefer watching La Liga and Premier League football. As good as the Bundesliga was a massive part of getting football back on the calendar. I think if they hadn't done the Bundesliga correctly, I would have questioned whether or not they would have even bothered bringing back the other leagues. But the fact is, the Bundesliga really pioneered the COVID-19 response, and they've done it very successfully. Not having fans in stadiums was very weird to watch at the start, but it kind of made sense. And they were still able to put on some really good games of football that we've all enjoyed watching. It's been great seeing people who perhaps have been Premier League centric beforehand now paying attention to other sides, even if those sides have been exclusively Borussia Dortmund and Bayern Munich. People have still been interested in watching other teams, which we love to see. And I think it's really raised the profile of European football more broadly, and people watching the Bundesliga and realizing that there is more to football outside the Premier League that they can go and watch. And also knowing that even though the Premier League has its criticisms, particularly with regards to refereeing, people will now realise that the refereeing standards are just as poor everywhere, because refereeing is a really hard thing to do. And we've seen some great controversial decisions, some great storylines, and some incredible goals as well. And I've really enjoyed watching it.
Yeah, and Joe, I'll throw it the same to you. You're shaking your head. I'm not really sure why. But
just the quality of refereeing is not the same everywhere. That's just the word of a referee that's been shouted at by too many players.
No, that's
just the complaints of a qualified referee who's been shouted at by too many players in the past. It is a difficult art.
Are you saying that the Premier League has worse refereeing quality than other leagues?
Relative to a lot of them, I would say yes. Not noticeably,
totally
not to the extent that like Arsenal fans say it's a disgrace, but it is definitely worse. Not massively.
Premier League's better than La Liga's refereeing quality. 100%.
I disagree.
La Liga referees are terrible.
They're not. I mean, whatever the case, the point of the matter is, if we're talking about the football that we've had so far, as a package, both post lockdown and pre, the Bundesliga has been, for me, the biggest surprise in Europe this year. Incredibly competitive all the way across the table. Storylines coming up left, right, and centre. At the beginning of the season, when the top 10 was split by absolutely nothing, comfortably the most interesting league in Europe to watch by a country mile, and that's coming off of two really interesting La Liga and Serie A seasons as well. Really incredible variety of team styles as well. Look at the 5 teams that are top in the league. They couldn't play much more differently than how they do. I mean, even Bayern Munich, the change from Kovac to Flick has been really interesting to watch as well. It's a league where if you underperform, cough, cough, Schalke, cough, cough, Werder Bremen, you get punished. These are teams that should have had European aspirations, but they've let themselves down with either poor management or poor individual play, and they've been suitably punished for it. And that's, what we haven't seen from these shocking mid-table Premier League teams this year. It's a very small sample size. It is only one season. We don't know if it's going to be like this year, but having seen an awful lot of football across the top 4 European leagues this year, Bundesliga is better, in my opinion, in terms of the package we've had, the competition we've had, but in the quality of football, I now think there is a gap between the Premier League and the Bundesliga. Bundesliga is now in 3rd place for me. I expect that will change over the next couple of years because the Premier League's saddled with that much money. But for me, there's absolutely no question the Bundesliga has been a better product this season.
Oh, this is a really, really lovely comment that we've just got in. I don't know I think you guys can read it as well, but this is someone's really enjoyed listening to us over the last few weeks, which is very humbling, and we thank you so much. Yeah, I think you guys have echoed my personal thoughts, and we've put down your social medias. I was going to ask you guys what your plans were summer-wise. I'll just quickly say that I am very much. I've fallen in love with the Bundesliga essentially, and I'm going to continue with it over the next season and beyond. So I'm going to be writing a few bits and pieces on that with my own blog, which I'm launching soon, which is super exciting, and some Swiss football stuff as well. Because if those who are not following the Swiss league, definitely start having a look at it, because it is mad, with young boys who were in the top 2 losing to relegation friendly teams. You had St. Gallen destroyed by Zurich. There's plenty of stuff to watch there. And Kasami of Fulham fame is still getting a lot of goals for Sion, which is an interesting stuff. But I'll now just kick it to you guys. Do you guys have any plans for the summer for Eurozone Pod? Should people expect some stuff? What? Just any. I mean, we've got your social medias there, so people can follow you. But anything to plug?
No.
I realize I am putting you on the spot. I do realize I am putting you on the spot.
I'm just going to be, I'll just be writing articles as when I can. Putting some stuff out on Eurozone more than anything else. Hopefully a few opinion pieces and things like that. I want to get more writing up on there. Sort of ended up taking an inadvertent 5-month hiatus from writing anything on the website, which is not great. Combination of being too busy because of station management, and then COVID hits. There wasn't a lot to discuss. I'm looking forward to writing some more stuff on that website. I think that's probably the main thing. And then just doing a bit more podcasting, and just trying to build up as much experience as I can ahead of next year when I go and do my journalism stuff, which I'm looking forward to.
Joe, anything?
I mean, as in a few days' time, I will be starting my summer job, which is a night shift at a petrol station, which means that my sleep schedule is going to be even more destroyed than it already is. Again, I regret the fact I haven't been able to write more for Eurozone than I have this year. My hiatus is much longer than Luke's, so he shouldn't be ashamed. A combination of final year work, radio commitments, and again, COVID, and the massive pile of essays that I had over the last few months, which I'm finally free of. In terms of projects over the summer, Eurozone, if Luke wants to continue it, it's going to, so please go listen to that. It's a much more casual podcast than what we had when we were in the RAW 1251 AM studios, but we still ultimately talk, if I may say, an awful lot of sense, and you'll learn a lot about European football if you follow it. As for other radio projects, there's going to be stuff coming out, I'm pretty sure. But at this point, I can't tell you because I honestly don't know what my plans for the summer are in terms of that. Nor do I know what my plans are going to be for next year. A lot of it's kind of under wraps at the moment. But, we'll see how it comes. I don't think anyone's really got too many plans, what with the current global situation.
Yeah, absolutely. And as I said beforehand, we've got some interviews dropping over the next few days. So just subscribe to this channel. And I've resisted the urge to say this throughout the term, but like this video, subscribe to the channel. And now I'm already
Cancel.
uncomfortable with what I'm saying. And
Get lost,
yeah,
Logan Paul.
so all our Twitter accounts down there for all the stuff we're probably going to do in the summer to varying degrees, but we'll definitely do some stuff. And we might still do some bonus shows, such as previewing the Champions League when that comes down to August. We might have gather some people and have a bit of a chat about that. And final thing from you guys: a bold prediction that's going to happen, that's going to come to fruition, maybe in the next few weeks from any of the leagues. What's something that you think may happen that might surprise people, or anything that you think will happen?
I'm going to go with Villarreal to qualify for the Champions League.
Ooh, interesting. Okay, so they
It's not going to happen, but I think it's a nice bold prediction that maybe might happen, which is fun to think about.
They're in good form, so there's a strong chance that might happen. Joe?
Atalanta to overtake Inter for third place in Serie A, and hopefully Man City's European ban to be upheld. I don't know when that decision's actually going to go through, but yeah.
I think we're 2 weeks away from that decision being made, 2 or 3 weeks away, I think.
Well, if honestly, from what I've seen so far, if their ban is reduced or removed, then I am going to be absolutely sodding furious, because their financial mismanagement is greater than, on a scale unlike anything I've ever seen before. And just to remind you, I follow Italian football week in, week out, so trust me when I say it's bad.
There we go. Mine will be as slim as they are. I actually enjoyed watching Mallorca play on Wednesday, and I think they might, if they can string some wins together, I think they could beat the drop. Maybe. But that will probably do it for us. And as that commenter said, thank you so much for watching our off the rails wacky Saturday streams that we've done since April. Actually, we did a test one in April, so since April. We've obviously, speaking for myself as one of the few people that's going to be around next year, I have no idea what the autumn term's going to be for uni. We may do more of these style streams. We may be back in the studio. I have no idea. But if this is the last one for a while, thank you so much for watching along. And just keep an eye on what we're doing, and we'll do some bonus stuff. So keep an eye on that, and hope everyone has a great summer, and we'll see you soon.